We call the Neaman children case. That's J22 110 NA. Have the attorneys place their appearance on the record, please.
Judge Johnson, fellow representing the Department of Health and Human Services.
Thank you.
Judge David Delaney on behalf of Elizabeth Neaman, who is seated to my left.
All right, if I could have all the other parties.
Larry Brown on behalf
I'm
of the
sorry.
children. That's fine. I'm sitting over here.
Thank you.
Larry Brown on behalf of the children.
Thank you very much.
Clarissa Redmond, Child and Family Services.
And then start back here.
Catherine Waldron, Child and Family Services, Foster Care Supervisor.
Thank you.
Leslie Donzio, Department of Health and Human Services, Foster Care Supervisor.
Thank you.
I am Jessie Thompson. I'm one of the therapists involved with the family.
Angela, Elizabeth's mother, the kids' grandmother.
All right. And I see a Christine Dillon on Zoom. Ma'am, could you tell me what your position is?
Yes, I'm the Director of Children and Family Services with North Country Community Mental Health.
Thank you. Then I see Lori Miller.
Oh, yes, I'm one of the therapists with Lasting Peace Counseling.
Thank you. Carly Pratt.
I'm a therapist with Evan at North Country Community Mental Health.
Thank you. And see David Spry. Mr. Spry, are you here on this case or a different case?
Different case.
Well, this is a children's matter, so I don't think that you can be here. So,
But I got a paper in the mail. This is the B.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, sir.
I have a paper in the mail, so they'll sign on at 9 o'clock.
Jenny, do you know what case he's here on?
I don't. Is it with Judge Hesselink?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is
What's
it? What kind of case is it?
Driving while on the impaired. Is there an account number on this paper? Here. What's the case number? 24-43364-SD3.
I will look this up.
Thank you. Sorry for the delay, folks, but I think we need to get this taken care of first.
Sir, your hearing is on March 27th at 9 a.m.
The date today.
Today's the 21st.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll get over.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Jenny.
You're welcome.
All right, we are here for a, oh, wait till Mr. Spry's gone. There we go. We are here for a review hearing, a permanency planning hearing, and then a motion filed by Mr. Sommerfeld on an ex parte basis to pause some of the treatment that's been going on and to kind of decide where we're going with this case. So we have a lot of witnesses here. Counsel, is this appropriate for them to be listening to each other, or should we have them move to video outside into a break room or outside into the hallway? How do you wish to proceed today?
Judge, I don't have any objection. I mean, I'd like all of the therapists to hear what the other one has to say, because there's a disagreement amongst the experts as to how to proceed. I think it could be beneficial to hear what other people have to say, and maybe that'll help move the conversation along. So I have no objection.
Mr. Delaney?
My client does object, and she'd ask that the sequestration be in order.
Okay. Let me come back to that in just a second.
I have no objections.
Why do you believe the sequestration would be appropriate?
And of course, the court knows well, the purpose of that is so that the witnesses are not impacted by the testimony that they hear. In some cases, well, in the prosecutorial cases, the expert, the law enforcement can be there, but it's one witness. You don't have a team of workers. And they all have different roles here. Not all of them are counselors. Some are with the department, some are with Family and Child Services. So if it's necessary for one expert to hear another expert, then he should indicate that. But he's asking the court to just flood the courtroom with all the witnesses, and I think sequestration would be appropriate.
Sequestration is the normal So that's why I asked. So I understand it will be a bit of a burden for you to have to sit out in the hallway, but I think I am going to do that just to make sure that we make an appropriate record and don't have inappropriate. I'm not saying anybody will do anything inappropriate. I just want to make sure that it appears to be fair in everything that we do. So any potential witnesses other than the lead person for DHHS, you'd have a seat in the hallway out there. And Jenny, can we put, well, who do you want to have as your first witness, Mr. Sommerfeld?
What's that, Judge?
Who do you want to have as your first witness?
The only witness I have 4 people under subpoena, Ms. Dillon and Ms. Pratt and Ms. Miller and Ms. Thompson. She's here in the courtroom.
Okay.
I was going to call Ms. Pratt and Ms. Dillon first.
All right, we'll leave. Which one would you like to do first?
Let's start with Ms. Dillon.
All right, Jenny, can you leave Ms. Dillon in the room and put Ms. Miller and Ms. Pratt in the waiting room, please? And then if I could have potential witness. Thank you, Ms. Thompson. I appreciate that. So I'm assuming everybody else here is not going to be called as a witness, or Mr. Delaney?
Correct. You will not, if you want to testify, you can't be in the courtroom during the hearing. If you're not going to testify, you can stay.
I will if I'm asked to, but I didn't know I was
You
going
can
to
go
call.
here or something.
Do we need to call her?
She can stay. I won't call her as a witness.
All right, and so the other ladies here will not be called. Is that correct, Mr. Sommerfeld?
What's that?
The other 2 ladies in the back will not be called as witnesses today.
Ms. Venzu and Ms. Waldron. No, I will not be calling
All right.
them.
That's appropriate for them to stay and listen.
I have a brief opening statement also, Judge.
Go right ahead.
Okay, unless counsel wants to go first, or Mr. Brown, no, okay.
Judge, Mr. Delaney filed a memorandum yesterday. I received it about 4 o'clock. I have not had a proper notice period to respond. That's what he has on the podium right now, and I'm just placing my objection to it because it is not factually accurate.
You certainly have an opportunity to indicate that if you wish. Go ahead, Mr. Delaney.
Thank you. So ordinarily, I might not make an opening statement in a permanency planning hearing, but I'm going to primarily because the court obviously came on the bench in January of 2025. Mr. Brown is also new to this case, but he's experienced in these matters, as is the court, working in Otsego County for decades, quite frankly. The court was, after the election, the court was here in December, I think, or November. Anyway, in 2024, the court sat in the courtroom and actually watched this hearing, if the court remembers. But the memorandum I filed is not really significant because the information I'm going to give to the court is going to be part of my opening statement here. And the petition began in May of 2022. It's not disputed that the mother, the father, and the 2 children were in a home in Otsego County. The mother and the father had been using notably serious drugs. The father overdosed and he died, which led to the removal of the children and drug recovery for Elizabeth Neaman. It's also not disputed that Elizabeth has been free of illicit drug use for a substantial period of time, enough that I think she has a very good handle on this, which is quite amazing. But what we didn't know was the trauma that she endured, and more importantly, that the children endured. I know it's important for my client to hear that they were not in the immediate presence of the father when he passed away. He was in a bathroom, I believe, that they were in the home. I just want to put that in the record. So in March of 2024, and the benefit of electronic equipment is that the court could go back and watch the hearing. That was a termination hearing with the court's predecessor, approximately March of 2024. Long hearing like they always are. The court denied their petition to terminate. That's significant because all of the facts that existed from May of 2022 to March of 2024, my client survived termination. So those facts really could not form the basis of another petition to terminate unless the mother started using drugs again. Of course, with her history, that would be fatal, and she knows that, using heroin and methamphetamines in those matters. The ex parte motion, I'll refer just to the motion of the state, indicates that in August of 2023, the children were 6 and 4 years old, and a parenting time stopped at that time and has never continued. And that was the decision of the department and or its agents to stop that parenting time. There was already a court order in place, and the state may contest that, but it's in the record with the court's predecessor. My client didn't just stop going to visits. They intervened, and maybe they had good cause to do that. They felt that things were not going well. But the answer was to come to court with a motion to ask that the court stop parenting time, which the court would if there was a factual basis to support that. But that didn't happen. They just did it unilaterally in violation of the court's order. The mother brought a motion in February of 2024, and in March of 2024, the court, as stated in this state's petition, to engage the services of Jesse Thompson, who has some expertise in trauma with children and parents, and has really done a remarkable job trying to resolve this, to reintroduce the parents. But the parenting time still has never removed, and that's paramount to reunification. The court is aware of the purpose of a permanency planning hearing, and that is that a demonstration by the petitioner that they've made reasonable efforts regarding permanency. Well, I'm going to argue at the conclusion of this hearing that unilaterally disrupting parenting time is not reasonable. The state would need to file another petition for termination. The court knows the list. I'll go through it. Desertion, no. Physical injury, sexual abuse, no. Failure to rectify conditions following the court's assumption of jurisdiction. That's already been answered by the court's predecessor last year, 2024, that there was no failure. Otherwise, he would have terminated. The rest are guardianships, parents' failure to visit. That's not my client's failure. Proper care and custody, no. Imprisonment, prior termination, reasonable likelihood of harm. Let me come back to that one. Serious abuse of the child, prior involuntary, prior voluntary, conviction of a serious offense. So they would need to list those. It's likely the state, so the court, they need a new basis for different circumstances. They can't use the old conditions, and they can't use lack of bond. I mean, if their argument is going to be that there was a lack of bond, I'm not aware of any appellate record that would support that. Reasonable likelihood of harm, based on, this is important, the conduct of the parent. What did Elizabeth do since the court's denial of termination to warrant the filing of a petition for termination? And all of the attorneys in this courtroom have been to the Court of Appeals and back on numerous cases. In fact, this one went up on the initial removal, which the court upheld. But in any event, I say that because if a petition's filed, if the court terminated, those are heard quickly, 6 months, but there's no parenting time again. If the Court of Appeals reversed, we would be looking at years of no contact, and then it would be over. Now, what do? These children would not have seen their mother for years and years. And then the likelihood of termination is really gone because all the efforts made by the state to terminate would have been used up unless my client starts using drugs again or some other issue. But that hasn't happened. So I want to put that in the record. And I think central to this, and I'll conclude, is that I don't think it's disputed that the department unilaterally stopped the visits. They'll tell you that. And it's in the record with Judge Cooper. And that kind of record would go to the Court of Appeals that the state stopped parenting time without any authority. And that's what's central to this case. Thank you.
All right. I neglected prior to statement to read into the record what documents that I've reviewed or have for the permanency planning hearing. So let me do that at this time. I have the Child and Family Services Court Report. Date report is 3/14/2025. signed by Clarissa Redmond. I have a case service plan for the time period of 11/13/2024 through 10 of 2025. I have a parent agency treatment plan involving parent Elizabeth Neaman. Report date is 2/10 of 25. The reporting period is 11/13/24 from 2/10 of 25. I have a parent agency treatment plan 2/10/25. Reporting period is 11/13/24 through 2/10 of 25 for both of the children. I have the lasting peace counseling report dated March 17th of 2025. And I believe that's the one from Ms. Thompson. Yes, Jesse Thompson. I have email messages from Jesse Thompson to Clarissa Redmond dated 2/12 of 25. That's included also with response from Clarissa Redmond to Jesse Thompson on the same date, and then a email from Jesse Thompson to Clarissa Redmond dated March 3rd of 2025. Then I have two reports from Melanie Hunt Counseling Services, one dated February 3rd, 25, and the other dated March 14th of 25. And I have a whole series of forensic fluid laboratory reports, all I believe from regarding Elizabeth Neaman. Looks like the dates stretch from December of 24 through March of 25. Any other documentation that you're aware of, Mr. Sommerfeld?
No, there is not, Judge.
All right. Any objection to those being considered by the court?
No
I have-
objection.
I have none. I've received them and my client is in possession of those also.
All right, thank you. I will use those for part of the basis of my decision today. All right, Mr. Sommerfeld, your first witness.
Judge, I'm gonna switch gears here. I'm gonna call Ms. Thompson since we're all being sequestered. I want to be, I don't want her sitting out there, so I'd like to call her first.
All right. Jenny, could you put Ms. Dillon in the waiting room, please? We're going to take another witness and then we'll bring her back. Thank you. Ms. Thompson, if you could come down, chair over here, I'll swear you in once you get here. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please have a seat. State your full name and spell your last name for the record, please.
My name is Jessie Thompson. My last name is THOMPSON.
Mr. Sommerfeld, go ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson, how are you employed?
I have a private counseling practice called Lasting Peace Counseling.
Okay. Can you tell us about, do you hold like any degrees or certification involved with counseling?
Yes, I have a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in social work with a clinical focus, and also have several evidence-based treatment trainings such as trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy and desensitization reprocessing for trauma material.
And do you hold any licenses in the state of Michigan?
Yes, a social work license.
Okay. When did you get that?
In, sorry. In 2017.
In your education, can you give us a range of when you went to school to get the bachelor's of science and then the other advanced degree?
Yes, I started school in 2004 and then continued on through, I graduated in 2009 with a bachelor's in psychology. And then from there, attended grad school from 2010 until off and on until about 2014, where I obtained my master's of social work.
Have you ever testified as an expert in court before?
Yes.
And in what areas?
in areas of trauma and the neurobiology of trauma, its impact on families, relationships, and behaviors, and also in its impact on disclosure, recantation, and the process of disclosing during criminal cases.
Okay. Could we kind of put that in a bottle of trauma as it relates to children?
Yes.
When you testified as an expert before, how many times would you say?
Wasn't prepared for all this, sorry.
No.
Maybe, I'm gonna say at least 12 times.
Okay. Where were you, in what courts have you testified as an expert?
In this court, in Otsego County, in Emmett County, in Roscommon County, in Crawford County, in Ogama County, and Oscoda County.
All right, Judge, I move to qualify Ms. Thompson as an expert witness and with trauma as it relates to children.
Any objection?
No objection. I would just note she was previously qualified by the court.
I have no objection. I think she was qualified back in July of last year.
Thank you. I will follow suit. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Thompson, are you familiar with Erica and Evan Neaman?
Yes.
And how do you know those kids?
March of last year, the court requested that, sorry, I have wrote stuff today, that the court that I get involved to determine if reunification is possible.
That was with both children?
Yes.
And what was the frequency in which you saw these children starting in March of 2024?
In March, there were no visits that were held. It was really just getting an idea of what had happened in the case. So it was team planning and consultation and setting up the first visit with the foster parent. Those actually started in April of last year. The frequency was weekly, at least scheduled weekly, up until today.
Okay. And why did the court get you involved here? I mean, was there a background of the children having a traumatic response when they would talk about or see their mother, when that conversation came up about their mom?
It was my understanding that this case had been opened for quite some time, that both children were struggling significantly with trauma from different caregivers, and they had been removed 2 times. And in the process of reunification, there had been some barriers in terms of visitation. And their very last visit with their mom concluded that visits were no longer safe to occur, so there hadn't been any visitation. So the court was requesting, is there some way to repair this to see if we can get the children to reunify with their mom or to build a relationship with her again? Or is it so bad that this can't happen?
Okay, so when we spoke on the phone, I could pretty much sum this up as, should the children start learning about closure, or should they be reintroduced to their mom? Do I got that right?
Correct.
Okay. So what has been your progress or lack of progress for almost a year now?
So in the very beginning, we knew that the kids were struggling significantly, specifically in meeting new people with new situations, anything to do with feelings, emotions, and obviously their mother. And so we started out with visits at their home in the foster placement. Those visits were going very well. It was really just about them getting to know me, establishing a therapeutic rapport. Their foster mom, Miss Webb, was present during those visits, but we really wanted, and by we, I mean me, to get them back into my office here in Gaylord so that we could start laying out a more structured environment for them to help heal some of their wounds. It's hard to do in the family home or any other environment. And once they appeared okay with me, we did move them to Gaylord. And those visits were going pretty well. Because
when you say visits, you're
Mhm.
talking about
Sessions.
visits with you.
Yes.
Not visits with their mom.
Correct. There was no visitation with mom. There hasn't been throughout my entire involvement, but it was sessions with me. My plan was to introduce this TheraPlay technique with them, which is an evidence-based form of trauma treatment, specifically to heal attachment and bonding and separation from caregivers. It stays focused in the here and now. We don't go back to the past. We just try to help them gain sense of self, safety, empowerment over their bodies and their voice, and really affect modulation because they were very dysregulated, a lot of anxiety, a lot of shutdown, a lot of behaviors in the past. So this was a way to help give them a lot of skills and tools. And the idea would be, as they start coping better and responding to distressing stimuli, they will be equipped to handle the harder things in life, like switching schools or meeting a new person, because they know they have the tools. Those were what we were focusing on with, this is a complicated matter. So with the background of knowing we're trying to get them exposed to their mom, whom they hadn't seen at that point, 9 months maybe. So this was a gradual exposure process. As their modulation tools got better, then we'd start gradually introducing moms. So this started with just conversations about her, bringing her up in session. So that's how those sessions progressed. When we started bringing her up, there was a clear trauma response from the kids, where Evan was more indifferent, but that could be also observed as a shutdown response. Erica just completely looked fearful. She had definite fear in her eyes. She didn't want to speak anymore, and she wanted the session to end. And it did take quite some time to calm her down before they could even leave for the day. And since that, I had made a recommendation to the court. She has some obviously deep-rooted trauma that needs to be treated in a separate way. My role wasn't to treat the trauma. My role was to give them tools so that they could meet with their mom. So that's when my colleague, Miss Miller, was involved, and she started the trauma treatment with Erica. From there, it did take, and I don't have the timeline in front of me, I'm sorry, but there were some missed visits after that. It was a disruption, bringing the idea of their mom into the picture. But over time, they started coming back. And Erica was having sessions with Miss Miller twice a week, and then with the kids together with me once a week. Also, throughout the course of that time, I was meeting with Miss Neaman to give her coaching, like a lot of parent coaching. So at that point, trauma treatment wasn't my role with her because she was in counseling with somebody else. It was to help educate her on what is going on inside the brains and bodies of her children so that she could be better equipped to handle what was going on and the consequences of the trauma and the removal and past behaviors. So she was getting that along with the kids in therapy. So we continued to build rapport with the kids. It kind of has been like this. They do great. We introduce mom, they backslide, and then we get them back. So this has been, we expected that. They haven't seen her in a long time. We definitely expected these backslides. And we just kept gaining momentum. They were coming pretty regularly. And then we started introducing different ideas of mom through a picture, through a recorded video. And the recorded video is really what just slid us back 100 steps, because that was a lot for them. From then on, they refused to come back to our office without a fight. So at that point, there was different transporters somebody from the agency, and then, or Miss Webb would do those things. However, they stopped getting into the car with anybody but Miss Webb, and then they would have severe behaviors on the way to my office. She even reported that Erica tried to choke her with a sweatshirt. So Miss Miller and I decided that this is too much for them right now. We're going to slow down and we will meet them at their school. That was an agreed upon place. However, it was a temporary solution because we know, given what they're carrying, school isn't very conducive to treatment. It's distracting. There's a lot going on. There's bells. There's all different things. But the sessions were good. Lori and I would go weekly. The kids responded. We re-established rapport and trust that every time we come, it doesn't mean something scary is going to happen or we have to talk about something scary. So the kids were doing great. However, the school, there was some stuff with, we are on the 16th snow day now. So there was a lot of snow day, a lot of cancellations, a lot of holidays, a lot of interruptions to our sessions where I really didn't feel we were making any moment, we weren't gaining. And it kind of felt, we got to this point where I'm not really sure what we're doing here anymore. So that is when I had asked the team, it's probably time that we start getting them back into the Gaylord office and start where we left off with mom, like getting her reintroduced to them, building a relationship. But that is where the team disagreed with that approach, didn't want the kids coming to Gaylord at all because they associate it with trauma and that they didn't want to put them through that. So we continue to go to school, but not making a whole lot of headway. And meanwhile, Miss Neaman continues to meet with me, not as regularly because I feel like she's reached max benefit with what I can offer her until I can see her implement the skills. I think where a big disconnect is we were called to do these things and we set this process in place, and Ms. Neaman's done everything that I have requested of her, but there's nothing more we can do there until we see it happen. And is it lasting? Is this going to stick? Did the skills that she learned from me in session really take place? And what does that look like in real time? So that's where we're stuck right now. I'm also concerned that, and I'm not advocating, I've said this before, for any one outcome, whether it's termination or reunification. I don't think she's ready for reunification at this point because we need to build a relationship. And there is no relationship between Miss Neaman and her children. And this has been going on for well over a year. Not that there's visits, but there's not even talk about her in the home. There aren't pictures of her being shared. It's my understanding she's rarely updated on haircuts or school appointments or things that they're involved with at the school. There's just a complete cutoff from her. And when that happens, any child is going to start disconnecting, especially if there wasn't a foundational relationship in the first place. And so my concern is the breakdown of a relationship over time. And I feel like we're just not in a position to recommend anything until we start to repair that part first.
When you talked about one of the reasons in your report, you talked about when you were at the school, you're in like a music room with instruments and you spend a lot of your time like being policeman versus therapist.
Correct.
Okay. And that was just to prevent them from interacting with these instruments.
Yes.
Okay. And you don't have that problem at your office here in Gaylord.
Correct.
I guess to understand you, are the kids, is the fact of even coming to Gaylord from where they're placed in foster care, that is triggering a response?
That's what we're told, but I believe they come to Gaylord for other appointments. So I'm not sure how they respond every time they come. So if it's Gaylord itself, or if it's just knowing they're coming to our office. which we understand that. We've talked about hard things in there, so they could have an association there too.
Okay, and I'll just kind of jump to the end here. You would like to force contact and report what happens to the court?
No, I do not want to force contact. This would be a gentle process of maybe we're just writing letters to one another at first. Maybe we're just allowing a relationship between Miss Webb and Miss Neaman of like, this is what's going on with your kids today. This is how they're doing in school. Here's what I'm seeing in them. That I think there's just been a really, there's been a block in a relationship between those two, and that could be for reasons I'm not aware of, but there is no team approach to this.
Made any progress in a year?
I believe there's progress in the kids regulating themselves. They've practiced the tools when we come there. We have a relationship with them, which was really I wasn't sure, to be quite honest, if we had a relationship with them, but when we discussed the possibility of pausing sessions, it's for a while when I wasn't clear what was going to take place, Erica did get tearful. So I think there's definitely a relationship there. And if we think about with us for a year, that's how long it took for us to start gaining safety and momentum. It's going to be that much longer with their mom.
Okay. Have the children ever, I mean, they're old enough to talk to you, right?
Yes.
And have they ever made any statements about like something specific about their mother that perhaps is a problem, scares them?
Never.
Is an issue for them?
No.
So you want to start with letters and then having more involvement with mom and the foster placement, Christy Webb.
Yes.
And that'll be your starting point.
Yes.
Did you receive information over kind of like maybe around Thanksgiving, Christmas, and into January that the children had made improvements in their behavior in the foster home?
Yes.
And what can you potentially attribute to that?
There can be a couple things, because the limited sessions that we had, we've been very focused on the kids getting in tune with their bodies. We've been doing a lot of activities of like, this is when your heart goes up and here's how we can calm it down. So the emphasis of our sessions with them have been on regulating those big emotions. That could be part of it. It could be because we paused speaking about their mom and getting them to do things they don't want to do. Why they've made progress. It's a sticky place because avoidance, we talk a lot about avoidance. It temporarily relieves things, yes, but over time, it has long-term consequences. The reality is Miss Neaman is their biological mom. Nothing will ever change that. What happens to them, nothing will change that. And so my fear for these kids is if we don't get either some closure or some movement with relationship with their mom, these behaviors will manifest, statistically speaking, when they start puberty, that's generally when we see a lot of trauma behaviors unfold. And I'm fearful for them for that, because we've been avoiding this topic. And also the more we avoid it, the more she looks dangerous, that this isn't something we talk about. She isn't somebody that we communicate with or about, and that kind of paints her in a bad light. And while I understand Miss Neaman's made mistakes, that's the whole purpose of foster care, is to restore and repair and to give her a fighting chance. I'm just not sure if a chance has been offered to her.
Okay, when you were saying she, you were referring to.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, sorry.
When the kids had traumatic reactions, when mom was brought up, did you observe those reactions, or were they all exclusive to going back home in foster care?
I observed them, yes, a couple of them, not to the extreme that Miss Webb had said was happening in the home, but in my office, I had just seen it was shut down and avoidance to talk and some tears. That's what I had seen.
Okay, and as far as, what about the reactions of the children outside of your presence? Do you know about those?
Yes, based on what Ms. Webb had reported to us, that there has been regression in their behaviors, and we started bringing mom up. Bedwetting, aggressive masturbation, at one point, violence, like hitting, punching, screaming. At one point, Ms. Webb had to call 911 because the behaviors were so excessive. And that is when we shifted gears to pause and kind of, okay, what's going on here? How can we help them?
And that coincides with the request to kind of say, hey, we need a court order to stop this.
That was later.
Later?
Mhm.
Okay.
Because at that point, we hadn't brought mom up for months because we recognized this is hard for them, and we're not trying to force this or damage them. We went slowly, and we since that time in my office and since hearing Miss Webb's report, we have not brought Miss Neaman back up.
In your experience through your education, I guess I'll ask you, do you consult with other therapists?
Yes.
And so you guys kind of talk shop about, like, you know, different experiences you've had, or maybe I had this issue going on. What do you think about it?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just saying, from your experience, is this an unusual case? The behaviors of the children? I mean, does this happen in every case?
It doesn't, but I haven't seen children not have contact with their parent this long either. So it's a combination effect.
Does the children's reaction to their mom, does it give you any indication as far as does it give you any indication about, like, how severe the trauma they have received from living with their mom?
Yes, pretty traumatic. There's a lot of history there, though, as you know. So they've lost their father. They were in foster care before. I think their whole life has been very unpredictable and chaotic, from what I can gather. And so there is a lot of developmental trauma going on. So regardless, it's really hard to say, like, why exactly it is Miss Neaman, because they aren't saying what's going on, which is where we would like to get them. And if anything, to bring healing to that, like, what happened to you wasn't your fault. Miss Neaman apologizing, which we've talked about, having an apology session, like, I'm so sorry that you went through that. All of those things are going to be beneficial to them no matter where this case goes.
Is there anything else you'd like to offer this morning?
No, we're just requesting if our services are still going to continue, which we hope they do. If we focus anything on trauma, it really does need to happen in our office, just because of the nature of the material. And I've noted in my report, the last 3 sessions have been interrupted. There was a sewage leak, there was a tornado drill in the middle of Lori's trauma session with Erica, which is completely dysregulating for both of them. And then the last time we showed up and the kids were in a play and we couldn't see them. So if we just had a regular time in our office, I think we would make a lot more progress.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you. clearly now you know the history of this case, even though you came in at a later stage, meaning that what occurred in 2022 relative to the drugs and the overdose and death of their father. You knew that.
Yes.
And fast forwarding, you also know that in March of 2024 or thereabouts, the court's predecessor, Judge Cooper, had a hearing to terminate parental rights and did not terminate parental rights. That
Judge, I'm going to object. There's never been a termination trial. Mr. Delaney brought that up when he was talking about his memorandum. He's asking this question now. It's just not factually accurate. Also indicating like Mr. Brown is new to the case when he's been the guardian ad litem all along.
it was Mr. Leonardson. No, this has been your case from the beginning? I have too many cases. But there was, well, let's get that established. There was a termination trial, unless you're saying it was a permanency planning hearing and the court did not allow you to file a termination petition. Is that your point?
That is a correct statement.
All right. And okay, I'll just revise the question. And my apologies to Mr. Brown. So in any event, the court did not allow a termination petition to be filed. So termination clearly did not occur. That you're aware of.
Yes.
And I'll stand corrected on that record. Now, so that's 2022 was the initial petition. March of 2024 was the courts not allowing a petition to be filed. Now, additionally, the mother had been visiting with the children since the removal in 2022 for a period of time after the petition. Are you aware of that? There were prior visits.
Yes.
So now that we have those bookends, if you will, the parenting time stopped in August of 2023, thereabouts. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
If you know, and it's not an adversarial question, but if you know, or what's your understanding, why did visits stop in August of 2023?
It's my understanding there was during the visit, Miss Neaman had her phone out showing the children a video. Whoever was supervising that visit at that time had asked her to turn it off, and she said she would, but didn't do it immediately. And then there was an argument between the two of them. I know there were charges that were pressed for assault, maybe. I'm not really sure, but I just know that that incident ultimately ended the visitation.
Do you know if the court, if you know, and I don't expect you to know this file from top to bottom, if the court entered an order prohibiting visits with the mother and the children?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. With the, and that was the stopping of the visits occurred in August of 2023. And there have, to your knowledge, not been visits since that time. Is that correct?
Correct.
However, and we've established that in March of 2024, about 8 months later, the court did not permit termination to go forward. Is that correct?
Correct.
So the court would have had knowledge that there had not been visits since August of 2023.
Yes.
So as you indicated, this is a very complex situation, well outside my expertise, which is why you're testifying and I'm not in this case. How do you quantify trauma? First of all, the stopping of visits in August of 2023 through now, it's March of 2025, had to have a substantial traumatic impact on the children. Would you agree?
Yes.
And maybe this question can't be answered, which is why I'm going to ask it. How do you weigh trauma from the August of 2022 incident, which was very traumatic, versus the absolute stopping of parenting time? What weight do you give each of those? 50-50, it's not quantifiable, if you know.
It's hard. I don't know. I do know that the ideal situation for children is to be with their biological parents. I do know that they were aware of her. I do know that there was some sort of relationship. I watched recordings of their visitation before where the kids were laughing and dancing with her. So there was something there. And for that to be removed altogether, definitely would have an impact long-term, which now that I'm speaking out loud, would probably have much more of an impact than an altercation that they witnessed from their mom. Parents have mishaps all of the time where they misbehave in front of their children. And how we repair from that is we have to have an opportunity for repair. And that means Miss Neaman telling her children, gosh, I'm so sorry that you had to see that. That had nothing to do with you, but there has not been an opportunity for that, which would have alleviated any trauma they may have experienced from that altercation.
The children, certainly from your testimony are displaying behaviors. If you can answer this question, what is more attributable to those behavior? The sudden lack of contact with their mother or the trauma that occurred in 2022? Which one of those is a greater contributing factor to their behavior now? If you can answer that question.
I think lack of contact with their mother.
So related, this one will be a slight hypothetical. If you've had this experience, I have, watching a soccer match with young children and a parent wants to start talking to you about your profession. But if I'd said to you standing there, my children are 6 and 5 years old, but I haven't visited with them in 9 months. What's your reaction to that remark if I say that to you? This is your field, and I say, well, I just stopped visiting with my kids for 9 months. What do you think when I say that?
Well, I would want to know why. What caused that? What allowed that to happen? What's going on?
You think that just on that fact alone, you're thinking that's going to be impacting those children?
Yes.
They haven't seen their dad in 9 months.
Yes.
And then you add a longer period of time. I mean, by August, and it's without doing the math, it's going to be 18 months with no contact. That's for that age. That's an enormous period of time. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Something you said I had not heard before, but you've had more time in this case now since we were here, and you testified at the March hearing 2024, or thereabouts, that there aren't pictures in the home. And so you mean the foster home of the mother?
Well, they're not sharing pictures,
okay,
or, like the basic back and forth of here's your mom, here's what she's doing, or sharing of pictures from foster mom to Miss Neaman.
You testified to this, I believe I have it quoted correctly. There's been a complete cutoff of information with the foster mother, with the children concerning the mother. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what's been reported to me.
Sounds like from that testimony that you think that it is reasonable for the foster mother to share pictures of the mother, to update the mother about how they're doing with their shots, with school, with soccer practice, if they're doing that, and that there should not be a complete cutoff. Is that the flip side of what you're saying?
Yes, so not for her to share pictures of mom, because we've already indicated that there's some trauma there, but sharing pictures of the kids to Miss Neaman, just being updating her, she's still mom, and allowing her to have some type of connection with her children.
Do you, have you had just general conversations with the foster mother, or do you not see her at all?
I haven't seen her in some time, but we were having some regular conversations.
Not that you were supposed to do this, but have you said to her, or could you say to her, as the therapist, and you have skin in this game now. You've seen, I've never met these children. You've met these children, you sat with them, you've observed them. This is what you do. This is your wheelhouse. Have you said to the mother, or can you say to the mother, I think as a therapist, it's okay. In fact, it's necessary to share pictures of mom, to share information with mom, and don't cut them off. Can you
Yes.
say that to her?
Yes.
Have you said that to her?
We have talked about being on the same team. So however it came out, it wasn't like, oh, you should start doing this, but it was, if they see that you can communicate with her, if they see that you aren't putting her in a box over here as something scary, their fear will probably alleviate.
If you know, why do you think the foster mother has cut the mother off?
I'm really not sure. I'm not sure if they ever had a conversation before. So if that, maybe that just wasn't something that was communicated, that was allowable, or if there were rules surrounding that, but they've never communicated.
You also said in your testimony with the state that I'm not sure a chance has been offered to her, to Elizabeth. So are you asking her to be given that chance?
Yes. Well, I understand chances were probably provided in the beginning. Nothing has been offered since we've been involved, and she's been receiving a lot of coaching and counseling.
And you also said that Elizabeth has done everything you've asked her to do.
Yes.
She can't do any more.
Right.
That doesn't happen in my cases very often, that a witness answers a question like that in an abuse neglect case. So the reunification hurdle, and I know we just can't summarize these things in one sentence, isn't things, usually it's because the parent's not getting what they need to have done. But the hurdle is with the children, not with the parent.
In our involvement, yes. There may be, and I understand there are outside factors playing into it. We've said this to the team before, that our approach, we only see what's in front of us. We see what is being told to us. We're not in her home. We aren't looking at her conditions, her work environment. We don't know what she's doing outside of the therapy office, but that's why we rely on them. In terms of reunification, right now our scope is limited, and our scope is showing there is not a relationship between mom and these children. One needs to begin, whether that's letters, photos, whatever that may be, before we can even determine if reunification is possible.
Is there anything that is prohibiting you from doing that? Or are you now waiting for direction from the court to sort of have the green light to do those things?
What's been prohibiting us is the lack of sessions that are able to be held with the children based on school scheduling. So we've had a lot of gaps in sessions, and we did say on the onset that we can't do that because there's so much trauma being processed here, that any lapse in services sends these kids back several steps. So there's been an ongoing, we make it, we don't, we make it, we don't, because of the lack of consistency. And then not willingness to have them come back to our office. That has been a halt to no, we're not going to do that.
Is there anything the court can provide today that you need if the court were to continue your session? Anything? We're here. The court can enter all reasonable orders. What would you like from the court if you need something from the court? Anything?
Just for sessions to be in our office and to begin some type of relationship building with mom and the foster parent.
And I think, hang on. your testimony was that you believe you should be allowed to continue what you're doing with these additional measures.
Yes, and we will be monitoring their responses to things. But we need the whole team to help us do this. I would love if Miss Webb would be present if we were to do a visit with Miss Neaman. If she doesn't want to, I understand that, but it's going to take all of us to do this.
And Miss Webb is the foster mom?
Yes.
Okay. And candidly, no one wants this to be adversarial. Very often they are. In the past, it's certainly been adversarial with Elizabeth before the court's ruling on not allowing termination to proceed. That's behind us now. But everyone has the best interests of these children. Anyone else that you'd like to get on the team? And I don't mean that adversarial, but Mrs. Webb, anybody else that you think, gee, I need your help?
Evan sees Miss Pratt for counseling. I think it would be important for her. I mean, we are all on a team technically, but to be on the same plan where we're all working together. And so this may look like all of us are there. So she's probably another big factor in that.
Thank you.
Brown, questions?
Hi, just this is the second removal, right?
Yes.
I wasn't on the first case, but I'm going to assume that during the first case and they were removed, Ms. Neaman went to counseling, got her help, everything. There were visits because they were actually returned. Can you maybe state with your relationship with these kids? During the first removal, they obviously were having visitation and were returned. During the second removal, they can't stand to hear her name. Can you state what happened there? Why such a dramatic difference between the two cases?
Well, ongoing trauma occurred. So there's been multiple times where they couldn't trust their caregivers. So there's some of that, and they're a little bit older as well. And then it's also their last interaction with their mother was traumatic. If they're witnessing an altercation between her and they're confused about what's going on, that is a trauma. So that's what they associate her with, is all negativity. But there are, in my opinion, with me, leaps and bounds made in terms of taking responsibility. In the beginning, she didn't with me, so I will admit that. But she has since, and some of the processing we've done and the education that she's been given. And so it is my stance that she deserves an opportunity to at least repair now.
And I mean, the kids have lived in foster, Evan, I think, more than half his life right now.
Yes.
I know that you were testifying about getting that relationship back with their mother. It's something they're missing that they need. What would happen to them to take that relationship with Ms. Webb away from them?
Well, it's going to be devastating. There is no happy ending, I don't think, anywhere. There is going to be trauma no matter what happens. But this is why the team with Ms. Webb and Ms. Neaman needs to take place, because if those two can remain in relationship with one another, no matter what happens, the kids will have a relationship with each of them moving forward. That would be ideal. We can ease the blunt a little bit if we can work together as a team.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any further questions. Sure.
Let me ask just a couple. In Judge Cooper's original order for you to become involved in this case, I understand that he said something, and I'm not quoting directly, but something like that the court would like parenting time to happen as soon as possible, with the understanding that some delays may take place depending on how you want to proceed. Was that your understanding of his original direction to you?
Yes.
If you could, and obviously stuff has happened, and it's not going to be a perfect way to do this, but if you could lay out for me your plan for moving forward, if that were to be the order.
So my plan would be for Erica to begin trauma counseling, well, to continue trauma counseling with Ms. Miller. So we can process all the things that are going on, knowing that's going to take some time because she opens up and then she doesn't. So we have to tread lightly with that. Meanwhile, Ms. Neaman, I've given her lots of coaching, but to continue so she doesn't lose any of the principles and things that we've discussed. Evan would continue with Ms. Pratt working on trauma. And then I working with the kids. Again, we start that process again. Once we've alleviated some of the trauma material, we can see that they can handle some stuff. We start gradually exposing the kids back to the idea of mom, knowing there's going to be a reaction, but practicing the tools that they're learning in therapy. And then building some type of communication between Miss Webb and Miss Neaman, and I can be the in-between to do that, giving prompts and different things.
Any way to indicate how long that process is going to be?
If we can continue without interruption, it is very hard to say. I think we'd have a pretty good understanding of what's going on in probably 6 months, whether this is going to take or not.
You've had, there has been approximately a year's length from the time that Judge Cooper originally said, let's move towards reunification, and today.
Yes.
What barriers and what progress has been made in that year?
The progress that's been made is a relationship with myself, Miss Miller, and the kids. So that was huge. Some other progress that's been made is mostly with Miss Neaman. She has completed intensive trauma treatment with me. That was allowed by the court a few months ago, and has completed the parenting coaching with me. So this is in terms of the whole brain, like we use a workbook, a whole brain child. She's done all of the homework. So that's a lot of progress there in terms of assignments and attending sessions and processing things. The children have learned a lot about regulating their big emotions. That's the progress we've made. The barriers are our environment for counseling and the lack of consistency in sessions.
Kids have reportedly had a lot of extreme behaviors when presented with mom in any form.
Yes.
Normal, slightly out of the norm, extremely out of the norm. Where would that fall on the continuum?
Probably in the middle. And it's hard for me to assess, is it because you haven't? Is it because of the breakdown of the relationship? So you haven't seen her in so long that it's scary to see her? Or is it all because of the trauma you've endured that's associated with her? So it's in the middle. I have seen kids react this way. I just haven't seen them react this way for this long. But because of the inconsistency of sessions, introducing her and then not speaking about her since August, there is some correlation there too.
Would you say that the problems with the timing and number of sessions that you've had and the interruptions, that's my word, the interruptions that you've had have really slowed down the progress that you were making?
Yes.
So you're basically, and I understand this is not hard science. We can say 6 months is a drop dead date kind of thing, but you're looking at, if you are allowed to have the amount and the type of therapeutic contact with the kids that you're talking about, you believe that in approximately 6 months we can make their assessment of which direction to go with this family, whether we go towards reunification with mom and kids, or whether we go towards permanency kids without mom.
Yes.
If we don't do that, if we make a divergence today, how is that going to impact kids?
I think you're not going to see a whole lot for a while. I do think as they start to grow and start to realize what's going on, that they have a bio mom out there they didn't have a relationship with, behaviors may manifest then. We see these in different case studies and different examples of acting out and behaviors coming out. My fear is that there's just been so much avoidance surrounding her that it will build, it will accumulate, and it will explode at some point. We just don't know when. It could be healing to them after or some time, but they do need closure with her regardless.
Okay. In essence, let me put it in the context that my mind can understand. You want to bring things to a head now.
Yes.
To prevent a much bigger explosion in the future.
Correct.
That bringing it to a head now is going to involve trauma to the kids now. Fair?
It's going to be painful. Yes.
Okay. It's going to be involved trauma to foster care mom.
Yes.
Because she's going to have to put up with the behaviors.
Yes.
It's going to be difficult to process for you and for DHHS, but in the long run, you believe that is worth the price that has to be paid now.
Yes, and this is all done with support from us, like where we don't just rip it and leave. Like we are going to walk with them this entire time. And my reports before were like, we've already stirred it up. We're already here. The kids already associate us with some type of talk about mom. We have all the supports in place now. This is the time, and that they're younger, their brains are going to be more able to heal from these things.
Have you given any thought to therapy sessions at foster mom's house?
Yes, we've done that before. It is distracting. We can start there again, but they have animals and dogs, and they have other siblings, and their home they're all on one floor. So it can be distracting if we're trying to do trauma treatment.
See if I've got any other notes that I wanted to ask you about. You have said somewhere in your testimony today, or notes that I've read, you're not suggesting immediate visits with mom and the kids. Are you suggesting anything to do between mom and the kids immediately, or is it just stepmom or a foster mom and mother relationship first?
Yes, that first.
Okay. How long before we get to something with mom and the kids?
We can try this if we just give some guesses over a course of a month. And then as their foster mom is communicating with Miss Neaman, this does not have to be phone calls or face to face. These are just simple letters of what's going on or journaling back and forth. Then we start allowing the children to do that with Miss Neaman, the journaling. Okay, my foster mom's doing this, now we can do this.
So you want the kids to see foster mom communicating with mom?
Yes.
In some way.
Yes.
So foster mom's going to write a letter, or she's going to write a regular, hey, this is what I'm going to tell your mom what you guys have been doing. I'm writing this down, and we're going to mail it together.
Yes.
To foster, and then maybe it progresses to them writing down something or sending them up. Here's what I did at school today, kind of thing.
Yes.
What do you do when the kids act out again?
Then we're coming in and we're helping them through that. And this is where Miss Webb and I we've done this before, like walking her through, okay, here's how we're going to support them through this. Here's how we're going to move forward with this, but not shutting it down because they are going to have behaviors. We know that. Just continuing to encourage them and support them and continue the process. We'll have to look at how severe is this getting. If we're self-mutilating, if we're harming somebody else, we're going to have to pause and regroup at that point.
Let me ask you to jump from your therapist kids process and jump to the team here. Pretty clear to me that the other members of the team didn't want to do what you suggested. So hence we're here
Yes.
now. And you're saying we still need the team to help these kids holistically process. They need these wraparound services.
Yes.
Are you going to be able to do that with this team?
Yes, I can do that. It's if if they want to show up for that and work together, which we were, but then there was some disagreement.
Okay. So my question is, this has not fractured your ability to work with this group of service providers?
No, it hasn't.
I come from a world where disagreement is the everyday.
Yes.
That's why we're here in court, because we disagree. I don't know that you or other providers like you necessarily come from that same world, and I wanted to assess how difficult that's going to be for you to deal with. If there are continuing, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, right?
Yes.
Are you going to be able to work with people who may not necessarily agree with where you want to go?
Yes.
Questions based on mine?
Oh, Judge.
No, thank you.
Just had one quick one. I think you mentioned it before. Do you see this, or what is the potential, if you can even answer that, if you try to start implementing this, of the kids going from disruptive behaviors and blowing up to dangerous behaviors and harmful behaviors?
Okay, I'm sorry. The question is if we do see that?
No, what do you think is the potential there, just based on what you know about the kids?
There's a potential for that.
High potential, very, very low.
It's probably somewhere in the middle. I think in the onset, this would have been very high. But because they've been working so heavily on learning how to help themselves, how to calm down, it's probably somewhere mid-range, but it is a possibility.
Okay. I don't have any further.
Thank you very much for your testimony. You're free to step down and go.
Thank you.
Sommerfeld, next witness.
Can Ms. Thompson be excused, Judge? She was
Yes.
under subpoena.
Yes,
Could we take a brief break?
certainly.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Ms. Miller. We're going to take
you.
some testimony from you. Can I have you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right. If you could state your full name and spell your last name for the record, please.
I'm Lori Miller. Miller.
All right. Mr. Sommerfeld has some questions for you, so go ahead, Mr. Sommerfeld.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Miller. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I am Don Sommerfeld from the department, and I'm the one who sent you the subpoena. So thank you for appearing today.
You're welcome.
Ms. Miller, how are you employed?
I contract with Lasting Peace Counseling.
Okay, and what do you do there?
I'm a therapist there.
Can you tell us about, do you have a license in the state of Michigan?
I do. I'm actually limited licensed. I'm an LLMSW.
So this is a limited licensed psychologist in the state of Michigan?
No, it's actually I have a master's in social work, so I'm a clinical limited license social worker.
Okay, sorry, I jumped the gun.
That's okay.
Can you tell us about your training? How did you achieve that limited license in social work?
Well, I have a bachelor's of science degree with a track in social work and a minor in counseling from early, 2000s. And then I went back to school to Michigan State University and graduated from there in 2020 with my MSW. I've completed my hours and I'm preparing to take the exam for the full licensure.
Okay, and how long have you been associated with Ms. Thompson's, the Lasting Peace organization?
December of last year, so December of 2024. I'm sorry, 2023 it would have been. No.
And so you've been involved counseling people for about 4 or 5 years now?
Yes.
Okay, and have you ever testified in court before?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever testified as an expert witness?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and how many times have you testified as an expert witness?
Trying to think. Probably like don't quote, like I can't be very super specific, like 5 to 10 times likely.
Okay, and what was the field in which you were qualified as an expert?
Can you rephrase that? I don't really understand your question.
Well, when you were qualified, when you testified in other courts as an expert witness, what was the area of expertise?
My clinical history and then my experience with working with children who have experienced trauma.
So if we qualified you as an expert in treating children with trauma, you would be okay with that and qualified?
I mean, I have been, yes, I would be.
Judge, I'd ask that Ms. Miller be qualified as an expert based on her education, her length of time, and the fact that she's been an expert in court before for about 5 to 10 times in the area of an expert in treating children with trauma.
Ma'am, can I ask where you've been qualified as an expert before, which courts?
There's Oscoda County. I worked for the Children's Advocacy Center for a few years, and that would have been when I was called the most because of our clientele. So Ogama, Oscoda, I think those are the primary. Atrium County. And I think a few times in Atrium County and then another county, but we serviced, I believe, 6 counties. So it would have been within the Northern Michigan Children's Assessment Center's range.
All right. Mr. Delaney, any objection?
No objections, thank you.
Mr. Brown, any objection? All right, the witness will be qualified as an expert in clinical assessment and trauma of kids.
Ms. Miller, are you familiar with the Neaman children?
I am.
And do I have this right? Are you more involved with Erica versus Evan?
Yes, I am.
Okay, have you ever provided counseling to Evan, the young boy?
I have been, yes, at the school with Jesse. And then initially when we first introduced me, I was a part of that at the park, when we would go to the park with Evan and Erica.
Okay. If I told you that, well, Ms. Thompson testified first, she said that you had some issues when you would try to provide counseling to the children in the school setting. Do you agree with that?
As far as like being able to to provide like trauma therapy.
Yes, to have an appropriate environment.
Yeah, I do believe that it has its barriers.
Okay, so, and Ms. Thompson made a request to, if counseling were to continue, be ordered by the court, with you and Ms. Thompson, that counseling occur back in the Gaylord office.
I do think that that would be, if we're going to move forward, like especially with Erica, if we're going to move forward with like actual trauma counseling,
Okay.
where we're identifying and addressing experiences that she's had and then providing her the tools to work through it, it would be most beneficial to her to have a consistent environment and a consistent schedule with that.
Okay. How long have you been counseling Erica? Erica Neaman?
My initial introduction to Erica was at the end of May. And I met with her on, I think they were in a recital. So like 2 weeks ago from Thursday, I met with her at the school.
Okay, so are you talking, when you said May, are we talking May of 2024?
No, May of 2025. I'm sorry, May of 2024, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
You had me going there for a second.
I know, I'm sorry.
Okay. So what is the frequency of the counseling that you engage in therapy with Erica Neaman?
Since it's moved to the school, it's been, hit or miss based on like if there's snow days or school days or if she's in an appointment. Or like this last time they had a play and like I wouldn't want to pull, you would never want to pull a child from something like that. That's just not a great way to start a therapy session. So it's been pretty consistently inconsistent. But I'm doing the best that I can within the circumstances that surround this.
Okay. Can you tell us when you first engaged with Erica, can you tell us where you believed she was at, how you addressed where she was at, and how we have progressed up until today?
Okay. So initially, at the park, it was really trying to develop some trust, because that for Erica and Evan, there's been a lot of broken trust. You can see it. So kind of establishing rapport, building safety in, and that lasted until we moved her into the Gaylord office to come and see me individually. Once we did that, I introduced, and I hope I'm not answering this too long, but I basically getting her, I knew that I could just tell that there was a shutdown, dysregulation, shutdown, all of the things that come along with having a child who's experienced trauma. And for Erica, like when I say shutdown, like it has been consistently very, very difficult for her to, you see a physical shutdown. So it's not just even like we're running, or she sometimes does run, but it's an absolute physical shutdown initially, where she loses eye contact, she'll go quiet. Once we got into the one-on-one sessions with her, like once I was able to establish a little bit more rapport with her, I felt like she was opening up a little bit in sessions. And I was told more so than she had previous at all. So we were making some progress. Does that answer that?
Yeah, do you have more?
Yeah, could you would you mind giving me a more specific question to that? Like, you want to know where she
Well,
was at? Like, is that you're looking for like me to provide a broad view of where she was at? And what is that what you're looking for?
I'm just kind of wondering, like, if you're providing therapy to this child, what is it for? I mean, I believe it would be trauma, but I mean, how did you assess where she was at and where you needed to take her in a healing path to get better?
Well, and honestly, for her to heal, she's gonna have to have a consistent therapeutic like an opportunity to have consistent therapy that supports that healing. What I do initially with children like this is I do an exercise, like initially the first session, one-on-one is establishing rapport. I utilize exercises and activities from trauma play, which is a play therapy model I'm getting certified in currently. I've already received the training so I can practice it. And then I also utilize some things from TFCBT, which is trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapy, to do that because we really have to get, you have to start off with stabilization. So if we have a child who cannot even sit in what's going on, but we know, like from what I've been told, like 2 removals, clearly there's been some exposure, like without question, with how she's responding. So I started with some basics, like show me your world exercise, where it engages the child to tell me about the people in your life that you are in your world. So we draw a world. She engaged in that. She put her foster sisters. I learned about her rooster, hot dog, her foster mom, and then who else? Her little brother. And then, I was able to say, well, what about like dad? She put dad in her world at the bottom. And then she was able to talk about, dad passing. And then I asked about mom, and mom was not allowed in the world. There's a shutdown with mom. Mom was outside of the world. And she let me know that, like, so mom, like if you looked at like a whiteboard, because I had a giant whiteboard, the big world, all of the people, dad, and she shared a bit about missing dad, and then mom was way outside, but she got to be on the board. The next phase to that is like, okay, tell me 3 things that you really like about this, and is there anything that you don't like about or that you would like the person in the world to do differently? It's just a shutdown with mom. So that's how we initially started. I know that she's having some explosive episodes at home, right? All of the things that go along with trauma, possible, the target would be then the next one that I do for assessment for kiddos is, of course, at their level when they're, with Erica, it's you have to be I feel like I had to be very careful. So I did an assessment where like, let's talk about your 3 wishes from these people in your world. Um, I wish my dad was still alive, right? But as far as mom goes, again, it's a shutdown. So that to me, like we've got to work on some of those target areas from the trauma that, whether it's trauma from being removed from living with an addict, being removed from home, losing dad, and then going back and then being removed again, like that attachment alone, those struggles alone can be traumatic. She's been in care for a really long time. And then so the target there would be like, we're going to look at the guilt, the shame, her behavioral outburst. Are there some PTSD symptoms here? Bedwetting, irritability, and then the shutdown. When we talk about that, it's almost like you can see where she just can't hold it. She can't hold it. My job is to hold it with them. So yeah, it's a as far as hope and healing goes, getting her to be able to be validated in how she feels. So I used a lot of gradual exposure for her because my goal for her kind of had to shift a little bit to safety, self-worth, coping strategies. Uh, and then a little gradual exposure. So bringing up her loss with dad, bringing up mom, just getting her able to even sit with that for like 2 seconds or a couple minutes, not just shut down completely, would be a helpful goal for her moving forward for healing, where she's getting to that age like 12, 13, where those hormones kick in and there's another developmental shift. If there's not some assistance for her to be able to really get secure and to really be able to deal with some of the things that she's experienced, because I don't believe that I believe she's carrying a lot of experiences that she has not disclosed just based on her shutdown with mom. That's not necessarily helpful to her in any capacity. Helping her to understand that bad things have happened to her. She's not a bad kid. Helping her to understand, and this has been a common theme, like anything you've been through is not your fault. You've had, right? Like that's a huge one for kids. They carry that. Kids who've experienced trauma carry that. That can move into shame and those things that we really don't want her to carry, because truly, this isn't her fault.
Okay,
If that answers
you-
that.
all right. Do you agree with Miss Jessie Thompson about having a plan about a month long to start out with some potential letters from the kids to their mom back and forth, and then a relationship developing between foster mom and the mother of the children, Elizabeth Neaman, to eventually having that in-person contact? I mean, rather than stopping that?
I believe that, and I don't, if I could I step back, just one step back to that
Sure.
Erica had started, she had disclosed just one experience, which I guess I've been told she hasn't really disclosed. Before we shifted to the school, and I believe she had some behavioral outcomes at home that were problematic, and I think that's kind of part of the resistance to therapy that is bringing these things to the forefront. She had disclosed that that mom had tied her down and hit her. And that was a lot hard for her to discuss that. Like she disclosed that at home to foster mom. And then I had, just asked her briefly, not in an opposing way. And she disclosed that to me, and then she shut, the eyes went down. So I encouraged her, the more that you talk and the more that you're able to say and the more of your story that she's able to share, I think would give more of a benefit to be able to answer that question. Because from where the lens that I have been a part of, I'm solely really predominantly here for Erica. There hasn't been a lot of disclosure about those types of situations with mom. It's been more of, it sounds like from where I sit, more of like a drug addiction, not really understanding where, not remembering things that have happened to the kids or the things that they've been exposed to. So I thought that's one of the reasons why I believe that allowing children to develop those abilities to regulate and to deal with and to process things they've been through, because it's also a voice for the kids on what really went on, because they were young and they haven't really had a voice in that. So saying that, with as long as they've been in care, and it sounds like it's been about, and I don't know, like 18 months since it's been a long time since they've had contact with mom. If that's going to happen, that would be the way that I would go. I think that would be the healthiest way for those kids to be reintroduced to mom. And they would need to be able to be reintroduced in a way where they could, with Erica, she'd have to have a lot of preparation to be able to do that. And it would take support from the adults in the room to make them feel safe enough to be able to do that. I don't think that would be like automatically because they were even able to tolerate that, where mom should have access or where mom has proven herself to be safe enough or where Erica has any, she has no desire to see mom. She has said that repeatedly. So yeah, I do believe that if this is the direction that is taken, I do believe that that would be a healthy way to do it. The healthiest, it's a bad situation that these kids have been put in. It's a bad situation that Erica has been put in, and Evan by default, Evan also. But if this was going to move forward in that capacity, that would be the safest way, I think, for the kids to do it, with care, with safe adults, and with the ability to process through the feelings and all of the and hopefully opportunity to share more about their experience with mom.
Okay, that when you spoke about Erica had a disclosure about being tied up by mom, is that the only disclosure that she's made regarding her mom?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, one moment. Judge.
Mine is like just not wanting to see her or not wanting her in her world. Being mad at her, because we've done a lot of work with like identifying emotions. Does that one of her, trauma changes the makeup of the brain in kids and how they cope? And I believe one of her areas that she's coped is just shut down. And so even to get her to feel some of those emotions, you can feel the pain, you can see the struggle in that. And so for her to even say no and for her to address it takes a lot for her to be able to do that, which is telling. There's a lot of hurt there and there would need to be a ton of repair, but predominant safety, mom would have to be to make that plan happen. There would have to be a ton of boundaries and safeties and personal responsibility and accountability for mom.
Do you provide any counseling to Elizabeth Neaman, the mother of the children?
No, I haven't had anything to do with mom.
Have you ever met her?
No.
Have you met foster mom before?
1 or 2 times.
I have nothing further, Judge.
Mr. Delaney?
Thank you. Ms. Miller, my name is David Delaney. I'm the attorney for Elizabeth Neaman, and I've been involved in this case from the beginning, minus the prior removal, which I think was in a different county, but basically May of 2022. Just so you're aware of my involvement. And you're aware, just so I know your understanding of the case, that in May of 2022, the father overdosed and died in the home, and that led to this petition. You're aware of that?
Yes.
Are you aware that that following the removal of the children, that the mother, Elizabeth Neaman, was having visits with the children?
Yes, I was aware of that.
Are you aware that in August of 2023, those visits stopped?
Yes, I was aware of that.
And they have stayed stopped, if you will. There has been no contact with the mother and the children since August of 2023 until now, March of 2025. You're aware of that?
Yes.
And are you aware, and now I can say this correctly, that in March of 2024, the court's predecessor, Judge Cooper, did not allow the filing of a petition to terminate the parental rights, and therefore rights weren't terminated. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
What do you know about, and I recognize you have a different role. Your job is not to read the court file and study termination of parental rights, so I'm not I know attorneys often have agendas. I just want to understand what you understand. What do you know about the stopping of the parenting time in August of 2023? Who authorized that? Who did that? Or do you just know it stopped?
I just know that it stopped due to an altercation in front of the kids.
What, putting aside the reasons for that, what impact did that have, the stopping of parenting time, given the history? There was the August 20, the 2022 petition, I think that was in May, death of a parent, parenting time, and then stopping of the parenting time, and that's been 18 months, at least maybe 19. What impact did that have on the children, if you know, with the abrupt stopping of parenting time for Elizabeth and the children?
I don't. What impact? So I think I would have to look at all of the files and the case files to be able to determine if I get what you're asking.
Sure.
If that would be something that would have been detrimental to the children, or if that was something that was like a protective measure that needed to be put into place. I don't think I could answer that. Because I have not read those files, and that hasn't been my job. Was to carry trauma and to work with Erica and to see if this would be something that, to be a part of that process if they could be reintroduced. So I wouldn't be able to answer that.
And I do understand your answer, because in our court system, we stop parenting time where the children are at risk of harm. So it's a good thing, right? In that hypothetical, separate the parent from the child because the parent is a harm. But in general, if that's not the case, and this is hypothetical, I understand, separating a parent from a child is usually not good. Correct? Absent danger for that child, absent harm for that child. Let's take that out, okay?
Well,
just the fact that there's no contact.
If, again, and I'm not trying to be, if it was done to protect the child from additional harm, or whether it mental, emotional, physical, sexual, then that would be a hard one. Because yes, it's never great for children. We know it's not great for kids. This is not an ideal situation. This has not been, by no fault of the children, an ideal situation for Erica or Evan to go in and out of care and to be in this and to live in the limbo that they've been living in as well. It's not good for them. It's not good in development. We know this. So I wouldn't, that being said, there's a reason that these things are done. So I just think I don't feel like I would be able to answer that without having been a part of and having all of the information in front of me. It'd be one thing if Erica had been sharing with me, more different experiences, and that would be one thing, because I could come to you with that information like, well, but that hasn't been the case at all. So I don't feel like I could answer that for you.
Jessie Thompson testified before you did, and she used these words that the foster mother, there was a complete cutoff of communications with the children and the biological mother. And what I mean by that is, and what she testified to was, the foster mother wasn't sharing pictures of the children with the mom, letters. There's a severance of contact. I'm not talking about the visits. I'm just talking about any shared information. What do you know about that? Is that news to you? Had you heard that? Had Jessie shared that with you? Have you talked to the foster mom? What do you know?
I have not had a lot of interaction with foster mom. The foster care workers would bring Erica to her sessions with me, and then we went to the school. So I've not had a lot of conversations with her, and that may have been something that Jesse and I have discussed, but it would have been a very like flighting thing. I didn't work with mom. So I'm in a different spot.
The next question you were asked, and that's what lawyers do, we ask the same question over again, trying to get a different answer. But Jesse basically, in sum, asked the court for more time and provided a plan for that, and gave really extensive testimony about that, not just pie in the sky, gee, more time. And the court questioned her about what that would look like, and with pretty significant detail. Having said that, are you in agreement with that generally, that more time could be beneficial with the right plan, with the team, as Jesse testified?
It would the only way I would ever say that this would be any help for the kids is it would have to be a team. It would have to be safe with a team approach for absolutely.
Do you think, and I'm okay with you not being able to answer the question, do you think that you are at a disadvantage on a lot of these questions because you don't know what was behind the suspension of parenting time from August of 2023 till now? In other words, if you had that, if you knew more about that, what the reasons were, that you might be able to give more informative answers. I mean, because you don't have that information. That's not anything that you did. And maybe it wouldn't even come from the court file. But if you had that information, if you knew what the reasons were, would that be beneficial?
Well, I think, that's a broad question, because I had some of the reasoning for the initial removals and the re-removal, just not like the specifics that you were asking me about.
Can I ask you, can I stop you just for a second? I'm sorry.
Sure.
And I don't mean the removal in 2022. I mean the stopping of the parenting time in 2023. If you knew more about that, would that be beneficial to your answers today?
It might be beneficial to you. I don't really know I don't know if I can answer that. Like, I don't
you want to know why?
if it would be.
Wouldn't you want to know why parenting time was stopped in 2023?
Well,
If
it
you
was
would,
stopped
if you don't.
because said it was stopped because she had an altercation in front of the children.
Who told you that?
Well, I've been a part of a few wraparound team meetings, or it could have been Jesse.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Mr. Brown, any questions?
Go ahead.
I have no follow-up questions.
Neither do I, Judge.
All right. Thank you very much for your testimony, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're free to
Can
go.
she be excused, Judge?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're free to go, ma'am. Your next witness, Mr. Sommerfeld.
Carly Pratt, she's on Zoom also. From CMH.
Ms. Wagner, if we could have Ms. Pratt in the courtroom, please. Good morning, Ms. Pratt.
Morning.
Are you prepared to testify?
Thank you.
All right, let me have you raise your right hand, please, so I can swear you in. You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your full name and spell your last name for the record, please.
I'm Carly Pratt, P-R-A-T-T.
Thank you. Mr. Sommerfeld has some questions for you.
Thank you. Ms. Pratt, can you hear me okay?
I can.
My name is Don Sommerfeld. I represent the Department of Health and Human Services. I sent you the subpoena and thank you for appearing this morning.
Yep.
So, how are you employed?
I am a children's behavioral specialist with North Country Community Mental Health in Gaylord, Otsego County.
Is that something that is licensed through the state of Michigan?
Yes.
And what would you call that? What kind of license? Is that
My license, I'm a licensed
Yeah.
therapist. Sorry.
So a licensed therapist, okay. Can you tell us about your education, how you rose to the level of becoming a licensed therapist?
I obtained my bachelor's degree and then went ahead and got my master's in mental health counseling.
Can you give us some dates of when you got your bachelor's degree?
My bachelor's, I obtained that in 2017, 2018. And then I started my master's in 2019 and finished that in 2021, 22.
And so you've been a licensed therapist for approximately three years?
Yeah, yes, I would say probably 2.5 if we're being exact.
Okay. And in your specialty, you said children's behavioral specialist. What do you typically counsel children for, or what methodology are you using?
So the services that I provide specifically with this case is children's behavioral services. So I do in-home therapy with kids who are presenting with behavioral challenges in the home or at school. But I also do other things within our agency.
Are you familiar with Evan Neaman?
Yes,
And are you counseling with him?
I am.
Are you counseling with Evan's sister, Erica?
Not at this time.
Okay. When did you begin your counseling with Evan?
So we have done 2 types of services with Evan. I started children's behavioral services with him in January 19th of 24 and ended that December 30th of 24. And then from there, we moved on to play therapy in my office starting February 10th of 25.
I'm just getting a pen, Judge, just when he's out of it.
Go ahead, Mr. Summer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pratt, can you describe to us what play therapy is?
Yep. So, well, with Evan specifically, I have had to continue building rapport, but it's a type of therapy that is non-direct. We play together and discuss what it is we're playing with, it's all about perception, provides me a better understanding of his perception, his connection with characters and objects in his life, and meaning.
Does the topic during your children's behavioral specialist, January 24 through December of 24, and now this play therapy with Evan Neaman, does the topic of his mother ever come up, Elizabeth Neaman?
In my in my therapy with Evan, he has refused to discuss his biological mother.
Has that been consistent for more than a year now?
Correct.
When you bring up the subject of his mother, do you observe any reaction from him?
Yes, Evan shows me trauma responses, and that usually continues with responses that affect his daily functioning in his foster home.
Okay, can you describe some of these behaviors that, I don't know if I'm overstepping here, but they're not good for the child?
Yep, so Evan will have nightmares. He will quit engaging with me. So when I first started therapy with Evan, he wouldn't even say hello to me. He would run and hide. That has since changed. He has increased aggression and physical acting out behaviors in the home. He becomes very impulsive. He regressed in his toileting and bedwetting. And he becomes very hypervigilant with his foster mother.
Okay, what does hypervigilant mean?
Targeting. She is his safe person at this time, and he becomes very hyper focused on his reactions to those responses towards her.
Okay, so is Evan having a good reaction with his foster mom or a bad one?
He has a good reaction on normal day to day, but when I bring up, or if it is said to have been brought up regarding his biological mother, it is not a good reaction. It's a trauma response.
Okay, and then, so it's normally good until we bring up mom, Evan goes back home and then takes it out on his foster mom?
Correct. When I was doing children's behavioral services, so before the court appointed the new therapist for reunification, behaviors were actually going really well. And then that regressed.
Okay. When you say that behaviors were going really well, is that when Evan was not having or did not want to have contact with his mom, like refused to go to visits?
Yes, he did not have his nightmares. He was engaged in therapy. He wasn't impulsive.
Okay. Now, what I've reviewed in the reports and I've talked with other people in the department, there seems to be a disagreement between Ms. Thompson and Miller's approach with your approach, and also your supervisor, Christine Dillon, in relationship to having mom have contact. Do you agree with that?
He, I don't know if you would consider that a misunderstanding. All I can report is the trauma responses that I am seeing.
Okay. Are you for the plan to introduce mom to Evan?
My concern is that children with trauma move forward with secure attachment and do not do well with unpredictability, in which we are seeing.
So what does that mean? What are you seeing that they don't do well? Well, what are you describing that's not good here, like to move forward that way?
What I'm saying is it would be best for Evan to continue in his current placement where he has strong and secure attachment.
And that is with foster care?
Correct.
So you are not, at this time, you're not for the plan to reintroduce Evan to his mother, starting slowly, working as a team, and then bringing contact with her in approximately a month's time, like having physical contact?
The kids are telling us no.
The entire time that you've been counseling Evan Neaman, does he bring up his mom?
Not once.
And when you bring up mom, that's when Evan goes home with some bad behaviors and other trauma responses.
Correct. Evan will state to me, I will not talk about her.
Do you think that his belief that he doesn't want to have contact with his mother, that this can be overcome?
I don't know.
Okay, so in Judge, I just want to move back here. I wanted to move to qualify Ms. Pratt as an expert in children's behavioral specialty with her limited license therapist practice.
Mr. Delaney?
Did he ask her about her prior qualification or being qualified as an expert?
I did not hear you.
No, I mean, that's a factor, and I can go there if the court wants me to.
Yes, I'm asking.
Okay, Ms. Pratt, have you ever testified as an expert witness before?
Yes.
And where have you testified as an expert witness?
When I worked for Children's Protective Services.
Okay, and how many times have you testified as an expert witness approximately?
Once.
And in what court was that expertise, were you qualified an expert?
I don't know if I was qualified as an expert, but I testified in Otsego County.
Okay. I'd still like to offer her as a specialist just because she hasn't testified before as an expert witness. That's not a bar to the court's determination. It may affect the court's weight. However, she does meet the educational and licensing degrees to give an opinion based upon her education.
Mr. Delaney?
Can I have one here?
Certainly.
The counsel for the state that was questioning you, that has been questioning you, used the term specialist. Would you agree with that term?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, that's okay. Because we're trying to qualify you and give a title to your expertise. He used the word specialist. What is the title that you are asking to be qualified as an expert in?
A limited licensed therapist at this time. I have other qualifications.
And a licensed therapist in the field of, what would be the field?
Mental health counseling.
For any age or for children?
I work specifically with children at this time.
And you may have already testified, but we're kind of zeroing back in on this. And how many years have you counseled children?
Well, I've worked as a children's behavioral specialist with North Country for 2 years. Prior to that, I was a family support specialist. Prior to that, I was a teacher at a local school here at St. Mary's.
And would your specialist extend to trauma or mental health counseling?
Trauma is included in mental health counseling.
All right, I have no further questions.
Mr. Brown, any questions?
No, Your Honor. Judge, I'd move to qualify her as an expert in mental health counseling as it relates to children.
Any have further argument, Mr. Delaney?
No, I'll leave it to the court.
Court will grant the request to treat it as an expert in mental health counseling for kids.
All right, Ms. Pratt, can you still hear me?
I can.
Okay. Well, you can now say that you have been qualified as an expert in that CO court, okay?
Thank you.
All right. In your opinion, what would be the potential harm to Evan if contact occurred with his mother?
Potential harm would include a halt in development with stable and safe relationships, the inability to process his own emotions, lack of understanding.
You think he could hurt himself?
Excuse me?
You think that a reaction, or maybe a reasonable reaction in your opinion, would be that he could potentially injure himself?
Not at this time.
Okay. Has he exhibited behaviors that one would classify as like aggressive or even violent?
Towards me?
No, towards anyone that you've known about during your involvement with the child.
Yes.
And who would that be?
Christy,
And that's the foster mom?
correct.
Okay, and what do you know of those behaviors? And have you observed any of them yourself?
I have observed him when he becomes uncomfortable, he will become impulsive with his foster mom, hitting her, trying to pull on her limbs, yelling, screaming. I've observed those. He has gone after his sister while I was there as well.
Are you aware of a incident, I believe not too long ago, where Evan was choking his foster mom while they were driving because he didn't want to go to therapy or Gaylord?
Yes.
Do you believe that contact between Evan and his mother there could be the potential for mental injury? And when I say mental injury, and you've agreed with me, there's the potential for that. What are you contemplating there? Like, what would this mental injury look like?
Well, mental injury has to do with the psychological consequences of a traumatic event, or a physical injury. So, because of his confusion and inability to understand his own trauma responses, that is likely.
Do you ever try to like, you have a therapy modality where like you draw pictures of like who's in your world? Have you ever done anything like that with Evan?
Yes.
And how did Evan respond to that? Who was in his world and potentially who was not?
Biological mother was not. The people in his world were the people he lives with at this time.
Okay, so that's like foster mom and his sister?
Yep, and his foster siblings.
Okay, was there any mention of his father?
No.
Okay, and mom was not included in his worldview?
No.
And again, he's never really explained anything to you about what is causing him problems in relationship to, his mom. When that word comes up, he's never really explained, yeah, this is why I act this way when we talk about this.
He refuses to talk about her.
And you said that's been consistent for the last, since January of 2024?
Yes,
And is that how he feels today?
yes.
So is it safe to say you're not in favor of bringing mom into the picture here? You're not in favor of that plan, even if it is like a gradual plan done with a bunch of team members, different counselors?
I believe it would be best for Evan to continue with his placement where he is strong and has security.
Okay. So is that pretty much a no? I mean, that's what I'm kind of looking for. If you can't make that, that determination, just say, I can't respond to that, but I'm kind of looking for, are you for this or against it?
I'm against it. I am concerned about the trauma that will come along with that.
All right, thank you. I have nothing further, Judge. Thank you, Ms. Barrett.
Mr. Boney.
Thank you. Judge, it's 11:30. I just want to know the court's practice. Do we break at noon? We go into the noon hour, or you make a call at that time? I don't have any plans, but just want to know the court's direction on that.
Do you have a half hour's worth of cross?
I never know until I start.
Let's just go until we get done with this witness, and we'll assess what we have at that point.
All right. Ms. Pratt, I'm David Delaney, and I'm counsel for Elizabeth Neaman, and wanted to be aware of that. With the prior witness, I also just wanted to get an understanding of your understanding of the file. And I recognize you've not attended. You came in later in this case, so this isn't a pop quiz on how well you know this court file, but it helps me assess your testimony. This case, at least in Otsego County, began around May of 2022 when the father overdosed and died in the home. Were you aware of that?
Yeah.
Okay. Then the case, the children were removed from the home, and the mother, Elizabeth Neaman, exercised parenting time after the removal. You were aware of that?
Yes.
Let me jump ahead to 2024. Judge Cooper, about March of 2024, about a year ago, denied the request to proceed with a termination petition, did not allow that. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. And then that led to more counselors becoming involved for the children. Can you remind me again when you became involved relative to that time frame? Let's just use that date. The termination request was denied in March of 2024. When did you become involved?
Be involved. I started services with Evan in the home on January 19th of 24.
Okay. With those time frames, the parenting time of Elizabeth Neaman, the mother, was discontinued in August of 2023. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
And there's been no parenting time since then. It's now March of 2025, correct? 18, 19 months, thereabouts. So you come on board and parenting time is not occurring. So you're January of 24 and parenting time had stopped in August of 23. Is that a fair set of facts for you?
Yes.
If you know, what's your understanding of the reason that parenting time stopped in August of 2024?
From reports that I have read, it was due to behaviors that biological mom was showing during parenting time. And then the kids began to refuse parenting time. They refused to get in the vehicle.
What do you recall what reports you got that information from?
No, there was police involvement. It sounded like things got escalated at a parenting time visit. And the police were called. And that's all I really know.
Okay, and you're not responsible to know this. It helps me understand what you know. Because it might or might not impact the testimony that you give. So if you recall, do you think that it was a police report that you read and that was a basis, or was it a Department of Human Services report, Family Services? And is that in your file? If you could look at that, would you be able to say, oh yeah, now I remember? Or it was not on something that it's not something you looked at, just you recall?
I don't know.
And so just a few follow-up questions on that. Do you know, and you may not be required to know, whether there was a court hearing and a court order that stopped parenting time?
I don't believe there was.
Meaning that you're not aware that there was a court hearing and a court order. Do you not know, or are you saying there wasn't?
I don't know, Dave.
Okay, thank you. Do you have an opinion? And since you don't have the underlying facts, you may not, whether the stopping of the parenting time was a benefit to the children because of police or whatever conduct, or it was not a benefit, or you don't know. You just started your counseling and that wasn't a factor.
That wasn't a factor.
Okay. What impact, putting aside the reasons, just the bare facts that parenting times with the only remaining parent, the other parent is deceased. What impact do you think, if you know, has there been on the child, Evan in this case, who you're counseling with there being no contact with his mother since August of 2023? Is there an impact on Evan that he's not having contact with his mom and hasn't for 18 months and he's, 5, 6 years old? Are you able to offer an opinion as an expert?
For me, providing therapy for Evan, we were moving towards goals and objectives until court-appointed therapist was hired on 3/19 of 24. From then, progress towards goals and objectives stopped with me, and there was a regression in behaviors that started when the court ordered for reunification therapy.
Jesse Thompson testified that there was a complete cutoff, her words, of information from the foster mom to the biological mom. Meaning the parenting time is not what I'm talking about, because we've already established that. No one disputes that. That stopped in August of 23. But the complete cutoff was no pictures of the children being sent from the foster mom to the biological mom, no letters from the children, no telephone calls from the foster mom, putting aside obligations or requirements. These are just what Jesse testified to. No phone calls from the foster mom to the biological mom saying, just want you to know the kids got A's today, or they went to soccer practice, they're in a play. Here's a picture of them with Santa, or no updates. So there was those were her words, complete cutoff from the foster mom to the biological mom. So first of all, had you heard that information before today? And did you give a response? I couldn't.
No, I said no.
Okay, all right. I saw you speaking and I didn't, okay. So you weren't aware of, this is the first you've heard of that at least Jesse testified to that there was a complete cutoff. You weren't aware of that?
Correct. I have no affiliation with biological mother, like Jesse does.
Okay, what do you, as a therapist, I want to see if you can weigh in on this, and it may be relevant, may not be relevant, you may have no opinion. I don't know. This is your field, not mine. What do you think about that between the foster mother who has the children and the biological mother, there's zero communication? And the foster mother has the children, so the mother's not going to update the foster mother on how her life is going, my job, my house, whatever I'm doing. But the foster mother has the children 24/7. She provides no information to the mother. If that's true, let's just accept that as a hypothetical. What do you think about that as a therapist, that there's zero information being shared relative to therapy, relative to the response of Evan, who hears about his mom and gets very upset because he doesn't know her? What do you have an opinion about that severance of information?
I am unfamiliar with the responsibilities a foster mother is supposed to provide besides caring for the children, so I cannot speak on that.
Okay, let me do what lawyers do, get an answer and then still try to dig a little bit. Only because you said the word responsibility. I understand that, and that could mean court order or obligations of the state, or I get all that. But just from Evan's standpoint, it's a big zero. He doesn't see a picture of his mom. He doesn't help write a letter to his mom. He doesn't hear foster mom talking to the mom. I mean, it's as if I were involved in the case. Evan doesn't know me any more than he might know his mom, but there's zero there. So as a therapist, when you're trying to work with Evan about his mom, and there's been zero in the home on that, wouldn't you expect Evan to push back a little bit and say, who's that? Who's that lady? That's what I want to know. And I'm not saying there was a responsibility, but if it didn't happen, if that's true, and I wasn't there and you weren't there, that was testified to by a therapist who was meeting with these children. So this just didn't come from my client, from the mother. So that's what I'm trying to get at is, what do you think about that in this therapy window of zero as far as information?
Dave, that Evan very much knows his mother and his behaviors are his communication.
Okay, final question, my final redig on this question. I accept that. He knows who his mother is, but there's no interaction. There isn't even, here's a drawing your mom made of Santa Claus, signed Elizabeth, signed mom, something low key, right? Not even that. I mean, there's just zero. Wouldn't that have had, that doesn't seem to be helping, does it, with Evan, that there's no information, nothing.
I can't speak on it, Dave. I don't live in the home.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brown, any questions?
No, you're not.
All right, Ms. Pratt, let me ask you a couple of questions. In your experience working with kids, would it be normal to see some regression in a child who has experienced trauma at the hand of a parent?
Yes.
in this particular case, you've explained to us some of the behaviors that Evan has exhibited when mom is brought up or there's an attempt at reunification therapy, for lack of a better term for that. Where on your experience scale does this case fall as far as regression goes?
On a scale of 1 to 10, or
However you want to phrase it to me. I'm looking for your words, not mine.
severe. His behaviors are severe. There isn't many trauma responses that he didn't hit behaviorally, if I may say that.
What steps have you taken in your therapy to try to help Evan deal with the possibility of reunification with his mom?
So when I started children's behavioral therapy, it took me a long time to build rapport with Evan, meaning him simply just hiding from me and looking at me and saying hi. He was terrified of somebody else coming in the home. So we started making progress towards our goals and objectives, building rapport, building trust with one another. And then the court ordered another therapist, and it's best practice not to have multiple therapists. And so my work was interrupted. And we have not been able to move forward with even the discussion of reunifying with mom.
What have you done to attempt to work with Ms. Thompson?
We have had a couple phone calls. We have an email thread between all collaborative parties. And that is really it.
Have you shared the extent of your work with Evan with Ms. Thompson?
Yes, she knows that my work was interrupted.
Have you shared the extent prior to the interruption with Ms. Thompson?
Yes, I have.
Since the interruption, as you called it, what have you done to work with Ms. Thompson as opposed to disagree with Ms. Thompson?
I have not talked with Jesse since our last collaborative meeting, which I don't even know. I don't have that date in hand.
Just approximately how long ago was that?
Month and a half, 2 months ago, maybe.
How many collaborative meetings have you had?
I have attended 3 of them.
Are they fairly evenly spaced out? So they were a month or 2 apart? And no contact with her since the last one, approximately a month and a half ago?
Correct. She
Right.
is, an email was forwarded to me about what the steps were moving forward, but I did not respond. Because it was just a general email.
And at that last collaborative meeting, that was when a disagreement, for lack of, and I don't mean that in a bad way, that there was a disagreement as to how the case should proceed, and that precipitated today's hearing. Would that be a fair way to say it? All right, I didn't hear that, but I saw your mouth move saying yes.
Correct. Yes, sorry.
All right, thank you. Any questions based on my questions?
No, Judge.
No, thank you.
All right, Ms. Pratt, you are excused. Thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Mr. Sommerfeld, any other witnesses?
Yes, I'd like to call Christine Dillon. She is my last expert witness, Judge. I'd rather not hold her over lunch, and then after lunch, I have one witness, Miss Clarissa Redmond from Child and Family Services. But I'd like to do Miss Dillon if she's available and if the court permits that. I'm willing to go past, or later into the lunch hour.
Looks like we should probably proceed then. Is she on Zoom as well?
She is, sir.
All right. All right, Ms. Dillon, can I have you raise your right hand so I can swear you in, please? You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, could you state your full name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Sure. My name is Christine Dillon, Dillon.
Mr. Sommerfeld has some questions for you, so go ahead, Mr. Sommerfeld.
Thank you. Miss Dillon, can you hear me? This is Don Sommerfeld from the department.
Yes, I can.
Good morning. Thanks for waiting. I was the one who subpoenaed you and appreciate your patience. So, ma'am, how are you employed?
I'm the Director of Children and Family Services with North Country Community Mental Health.
And do you hold any like certifications or licenses from the state of Michigan?
I do. I'm a PhD level psychologist, and I'm also a licensed professional counselor. I have a QBHP, which is a qualified behavioral health degree for applied behavior analysis, and also a CMHP, which is a child mental health practitioner certification.
Can you tell us about your education? How did you work up to being a PhD?
Sure. So I began with my bachelor's degree in psychology. I have a master's degree in counseling. I have a postmaster's degree in applied behavior analysis, and I have a doctorate in health psychology. And this is my 30th year working with children and families.
So the education that you're talking about would that have been prior to the PhD, or were you working with children sometime and still continuing your education?
Yes. I started working with children and families in 1994, and I've continued my education since then.
Okay, I just want to get a time frame. Thank you.
Sure.
Have you ever testified as an expert witness before?
Yes.
And can you tell us in what counties you testified as an expert witness?
I have many years ago in Los Angeles when I worked there, and also in Charlevoix County, in Emmett County, and in Antrim County.
Okay, and can you tell us about how many times have you been qualified as an expert witness over the course of your career? And I'm just looking for an approximation.
Sure, I would say 6. I think 6 would be fair.
Okay, and can you tell us in what fields were you qualified as an expert?
Sure, child and youth behavioral health.
Thank you. Judge, I'd like to qualify Ms. Dillon as an expert in child youth behavioral health.
Objection?
No objection, thank you.
No, Your Honor.
All right, the witness will be so qualified.
Thank you. Ms. Dillon, are you familiar with the children Evan and Erica Neaman?
Yes.
Okay, and how do you know those kids, or how are you associated with them?
I am the direct supervisor for our therapist, Carly Pratt, who has been working with the children for several months.
Okay, and what is, when you say that you're the direct supervisor of Miss Pratt, does she update you on what's going on in this case?
Yes.
Okay, and Now, when Miss Pratt testified, she stated that she was really only involved with the Evan, the boy. Is that, do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, and is anybody in your building, that you're the director of, is anybody counseling Erica Neaman?
Not under my direction.
Okay. So tell us what you believe is where the state of Evan's counseling is right now. How would you describe that, where he's at?
Right now, I do have concerns. I have concerns about multiple therapists. LPC ethical standards do report that it's in the best interest for children and youth to see one clinician at a time. It can be difficult for a child if they see more than one professional therapist. It can cause boundary issues. It can cause misaligned goals and objectives. It can cause confusion. And I think one of the most significant things is it can prevent a child from building a trusting therapeutic relationship with either therapist. I would say that's primarily a concern. Another concern would be just the behaviors that have been reported from Evan in response to trying to move towards reunification.
Okay. And right now, the counseling regarding, bringing up mom has been paused, and that's what we're discussing today. What is your opinion in regard to Evan moving forward in counseling and slowly reintroducing mom under a team approach of other professionals and ultimately having physical contact with his mom in approximately 30 days or so? What's your opinion as to that plan?
In regards to my opinion, I would say I would have to look back towards LPC practice guidelines and ethical standards again. We are bound by that licensure to practice both beneficence and non-malfeasance. Beneficence, of course, is acting in a way that promotes the client's well-being and best interests. Malfeasance is avoiding actions that could cause harm. And in the reporting, of course, this is through supervision with Carly, which I have every 2 weeks directly, individually, and then also weekly in group. It is my understanding that the behaviors that were exhibited by Evan were such that we would have the opportunity to provide a diagnosis of mental injury. And so in my clinical opinion, I would say that clinically forcing the reunification in full awareness of the effects of the children is malfeasance. And I would not recommend it.
Do you believe that forcing this contact, could it potentially cause like physical harm for
Yes.
Evan? And has he exhibited those behaviors before, if you know?
My understanding is that when visitations were first introduced, and then again when they happened, there were behaviors that are consistent with traumatic experience retrieval for PTSD, which would include nightmares, shutting down, increased anxiety, anger and aggression, and acting out behaviors. I would say probably increased impulsivity, refusing to talk or engage with his parent at all, and an increased hypervigilance with his foster mother, and then also noted a regression in toileting where he was bedwetting.
In your opinion, you and I are having an adult conversation. We can explain things. We know different words and have had different experiences. Do children communicate through their behaviors because maybe there's a lack of maturity?
Yes, particularly at the age that Evan is at that developmental period, they really are just learning verbalizations for how they are feeling. And there is a margin in that, dependent upon the age and circumstance. And I would say this is a very critical period for these children because they have the opportunity to thrive and to begin to repair these deep attachment wounds if they remain in a consistent, loving, and safe home and they don't have forced healing. Because forced healing is not a therapeutic practice. It's not something that's done.
Do you believe, or is it your opinion that a plan that encompasses the goal of forced healing or introduction, that would equal malfeasance?
Yes.
And as a corollary, it also satisfies that this is not in the best interest of the child or benefit.
Yes.
So I'm not here to ask you about, like, do you believe that we should keep the goal of reunification or not? I just want to talk about the best interest of Evan's therapy. What do you think would be best going forward for him as it relates to your involvement with Miss Pratt's involvement with Evan's therapy and where he currently is situated now in his mental health?
Right now, in my opinion, it would be to continue therapy with one therapist, which would be Miss Pratt, to continue with her work with play therapy. Play therapy is a very safe opportunity for children to express their feelings and to learn how to find words that they may not have, which is not used in more typical CBT therapy. He's a little young for that.
Okay. Ms. Pratt testified about that, much like the counselor for Erica did, that they had this modality where it's like, okay, let's draw a picture, who is in your world? And in Evan's case, Ms. Pratt said that mom was nowhere present. What does that mean to you?
I would have to see the picture myself really to give an opinion of that. Typically, in other cases, when we see that, it can mean whomever they have in the circle around them may be who they feel safe with. If there's no one around, if they're in a small corner, those things might indicate that that child doesn't have a relationship or connection with the other individual.
Do you believe that this forced healing plan could potentially cause mental injury to Evan or further damage him mentally?
Yes.
And tell us, what do you believe could be a potential outcome if the court were to follow that plan?
Well, I think if history is accurate, most certainly we would see an increase in behaviors again. And what we know about that, the behaviors I currently listed, those things not only stunt a child's development and growth and learning, but they also stunt a child's ability to engage in the world around them, which could include school and learning, and ability to have a felt safety. So those things like continued sleep disturbance, we know that children, all humans really need sleep in order to heal their bodies. Sometimes we may see an increase in illness associated with increased anxiety around these things as well.
Okay, so you're talking about this could potentially put the child in a place that it grows up in a state of dysfunction?
Yes.
Okay. And that is something, I mean, with your education, would you agree with the statement that a child's trauma has a better chance of being repaired than someone who is an adult?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because of the neuroplasticity of humans, when children are younger, they have more opportunity to make different connections and neural connections in their brain, which include work with the amygdala to allow them to have better experiences emotionally and sensory related. We know trauma is full sensory. It incorporates the entire human. So when a child is younger and they have an opportunity in healing, particularly at this age, there is a higher chance of being able to be more functional and engage typically in all of their experiences as they grow.
Okay, so what if the court adopts this plan of a reintroduction, which is going to include contact with mom fairly soon, I would say that probably about a month or so, and we're still in this place about 6 months later, what kind of trauma could happen to the children in the next 6 months? Could it be repaired?
I can't answer to that or speculate, but what I would say is that it's just more ingrained. So what happens with children when they have CPTSD, complex PTSD, which would have happened from their removals and the experiences they had, and then there's safety, and then that's pulled away, and there's trauma introduced, and then there's safety, and they just don't have the ability to be able to understand how to have a trusting relationship, and that we certainly know from evidence that that carries through for the rest of the child's life.
Okay, so if I understand you, if I have a brick wall of trauma and we proceed forward and it produces another brick wall, you're saying instead of one wall to tear down, now you have two.
Yes.
Ms. Dillon, on the flip side here, if Evan does not have contact and is not talking about his mom, do you foresee any negative consequences to Evan with that course of action?
I do not, based on his behaviors and engagement with his foster care mother in that environment from report.
Okay. Do you believe that Evan can progress under a time frame that it would be, reasonable to actually have contact with his mom in the future?
I can't answer that. I think that's speculation, but I would say that, again, repeated traumatic experience for any individual, I would say, doesn't work like on a timeline. I think we must be very careful. And so for those of us that do this work, we are very, very careful. That's why there is not a practice of forced healing, because every single individual, regardless if they're 2 or 92, really has to work at their own pace.
Have you ever met Elizabeth Neaman, the mother of Evan?
No.
Have you ever met the foster mom, the person taking care of Evan, Miss Carla, or Christy Webb?
No.
Is there anything else you'd like to say on this matter and how we should move forward with the children's therapy and the Neaman matter?
No.
All right, thank you very much. Nothing further, Judge.
Mr. Delaney.
Thank you. My name is David Delaney. I'm counsel for Elizabeth Neaman. Have you met Evan?
No.
So your opinions, and I recognize your background and experience, are based strictly on what information is either in the file or that you obtained from Christy Pratt. Is that correct?
Carly Pratt?
Carly, I apologize. Lots of names here. Carly, yes. Miss Pratt.
Yes. And I
Um,
would also say, based on a team meeting that we had with Jamie and Clarissa as well.
And Jamie is Jamie for the record, last name?
I believe it's Thompson. I believe she was the court-appointed therapist.
And who does she provide therapy for?
Evan.
And you also met with Clarissa Redmond?
Yes.
But Clarissa, you do not supervise, or are you in a capacity of supervision over Clarissa?
No, I work for North Country Community Mental Health.
Okay. I wanted to cover the history of the case relative to the opinions that you gave here. If you know the history, and I realize you didn't have direct contact with the individuals in this case, the mother or the children. But is it your understanding that the initial petition was in 20 of 22, resulting from an overdose drug death of the father? Were you aware of that?
Yes, I was able to see the exhibit for today.
Okay. Does that mean you learned that today, or you already knew that?
No, I did know that.
Okay. And then if you know this, and it helps me understand what you know, in March of 2024, Judge Cooper, who has since retired, and now we're here with Judge Hesselink, that Judge Cooper denied a request to file petition, termination of petition relief in the court. He said no to that. Were you aware of that?
I would have to, honestly, I would have to spend some more time looking at that exhibit document to know that. I know that he did appoint Ms. Thompson. That's what I'm aware of.
Okay. And again, I don't expect you to have, that's not your prerogative, as I understand this file, but it helps me understand. So Ms. Pratt came on board in January of 2024. Is that correct?
I believe it was January 19th, 24. Yes.
Okay. Since you have offered opinions about this case, I want to delve a little further. It sounds like you're aware that after the petition was filed in 2022, that the mother did have contact with the children, parenting time, after the petition was filed in 2022. She was visiting with the children. Yes, so that was a yes?
That is what I have seen according to the FOIA or the exhibit that is for today. I did read that.
Oh, okay. And if you know this, then in August of 2023, those visits stopped with the mother. The mother stopped visiting with the children in August of 2023. Did you know that?
Yes.
Okay. And then there have not been any visits since August of 2023, a period of, 18, 19 months. You were aware of that?
Yes.
What's your understanding of the reason that the visit stopped in August of 2023, if you know?
My understanding is in that record that you're stating, Ms. Thompson wrote a letter to the court regarding parenting time, which said due to the regression, she sees discussion about Ms. Neaman to the children at this time. To do so would be very negligent of what these children are clearly communicating to us.
Okay, and then who sent that letter to the court?
That I do not know.
Someone from an agency wrote the court and said visits should stop?
I do not know that. In the record, it says Ms. Thompson wrote a letter to the court expressing what I just stated.
And when was that letter sent? Do you know?
I do not. The date in the record says 9/25/24.
Okay. And again, this is not intended as a quiz of how you know this file. That's not where I'm going with it. What I'm talking about is the visit stopped in August of 23. So that period of time is what I'm talking about. What do you know about that? About why they stopped and what happened? If you know, you may not.
My understanding is that behaviors increased dramatically and the children refused.
If you know, so do you know who stopped the visit? I mean, these are kids. They can't stop the visits. They were 6 and 4 at the time. Evan was 4. Do you know who made that decision? Who said there would not be any more visits? If you know.
I do not.
And because of that, are you not able to weigh in on whether it was appropriate to stop the visits? In other words, you don't know whether it was good or bad or appropriate or not to stop those visits, just that they were stopped. Is that a fair statement?
No, I can weigh in that it was appropriate to stop those visits based on their behaviors.
Based on the behavior of the mother?
Based on the behavior of the children.
And who did you get that information from? That it was appropriate to stop those visits? Who told you that? What report? That's important information.
Again, I'm referencing the behaviors. So the behaviors that I know about, of course, were from being in supervision with Ms. Pratt, but also in the team meeting that we had with Ms. Thompson and with Ms. Redmond and Ms. Pratt and myself.
But Jesse Thompson didn't come on until April of 24.
Yes,
So,
we had a team meeting about those behaviors and what happened during that time. And based on their behaviors that was described and written, it would be appropriate for them to stop those visits.
and I'm not trying to chase this dog around the tree. Jesse couldn't have weighed in on that in 24 because the decision was made in 23. That's what I'm trying to get at, the 2023 decision in August. Because somebody was there and made a decision. That's what I want to focus on. In August of 23, who do you think made that decision? Clarissa Redmond?
I have no idea. I can't answer that because I don't know.
But from what you know, you think from looking at the record that visits should have stopped in August of 23.
Yes.
If you know, and I recognize you weren't involved in these courtroom proceedings, was there a court hearing after August of 2023 that ordered those visits to stop?
I do not know.
Was there a court order before the visit stopped that allowed the visits?
Again, I wouldn't know without looking at the exhibit.
In a related issue, Jesse Thompson testified this morning that the foster mother, there was a complete cutoff, that was her words, of information from the foster mother to the biological mother about the children. No pictures, no videos. I'm not talking about visits, just information. Here's a report card, here's a picture with Santa, here's a picture of them playing soccer. That there was zero from according to Jesse Thompson. Were you aware of that? If that's true, let's just accept it as true. That's what she testified to, but let's accept that. Were you aware of that there had been zero contact from the foster mother back to the mother regarding the children?
That is not my scope. My scope is supervision for Evan Neaman. My scope is not supervision for Ms. Thompson or the biological mother or the foster mother, so I can't speak to that.
Do you have an opinion, and this could be my last question, depending on your answer. Do you have an opinion based upon your background, which is extensive, whether, and your testimony was, promoting well-being, avoid actions that cause harm, ethical standards, that's what you had testified to, that in a case where termination was not authorized, but reunification was the goal, that severing that contact at all, anything, promotes well-being of the children and avoids actions that cause harm. Is that a good thing?
Again, I can't speak to that. I can't speak to that because I don't know anything about what Ms. Thompson said. I wasn't involved or allowed to be in the courtroom for that. And also, I have no idea what was written in the court order by Judge Cooper for that, so I can't speak to that.
Is this the first time you've heard that the foster mother cut off contact with the mother and the children?
I have not heard that.
Okay, till just now. This is the first you've heard of that. That I know Jesse testified to that today, but had you heard of that before today?
Jesse did not report that in our team meeting that we had, no.
Okay. Final question, I think. How many contacts have you had with Jesse Thompson, either telephone or email or in person, if you know?
I would have to look at my schedule to report that.
Okay. Can you give some idea? Is it once a month, or you just can't say?
I'd have to look at my calendar.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Brown?
No question.
Ma'am, let me see if I understand your testimony in a somewhat different light. You've indicated that you believe that forcing reunification is malfeasance. Have I said that correctly?
In this case, Your Honor.
All right. Let's assume that we have the exact same acting out behaviors from Evan at the very beginning of this case. So that the child is removed. There's been a determination that there was some trauma caused by the parent that caused the removal, but we are literally days into the case. Do you have the same opinion under those circumstances that you do today?
What we do know about childhood trauma is that it is for a lifelong. The degree of trauma depends on the ability to move forward in a secure relationship with a parental figure of any sort, along with, therapeutic rapport. So it would be expected that a child would behave like that, particularly after being removed from their family.
That was a great answer, but it didn't answer my question. The question is, do you have the same opinion that forcing reunification is malfeasance if the timeline is up?
No, Your Honor, because there wouldn't have been an opportunity for the parent to be able to make reparations in any way at that time.
Okay. So why do you believe that it would be malfeasance today when it wasn't malfeasance 2 years ago?
Well, I believe this all started in 2022, so we're nearly at 3 years. And
Thank you for that correction.
typically, parents through DHHS have the opportunity for at least 2 years to move through the process of reparations and making whatever changes they need to in order to have the opportunity to reunify with their children. That's my understanding. So now we are 3 years out. And so I would say it's reasonable that these children would have these behaviors at that time, at the removal.
So is your opinion solely based on the passage of time?
It's based on the behavior of the children.
Okay, but again, my hypothetical was the behaviors are exactly the same at the beginning of the case as they are now. Is the only difference the passage of time?
I don't think so. I'm sure it would be their response to having that time with their mother. And then also, in my understanding of the case, in supervision, and also in the team meeting that we had, in their response to even thinking about spending time with their mother, caused these behaviors and regression.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate the help with that. Any questions based on mine?
No, Judge.
No, thank you.
All right, you are excused, ma'am. Thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate your testimony. Mr. Sommerfeld, you indicated previously that you want to take a break for lunch. I think that would be appropriate, and then you have one witness after lunch.
I'd like to, and then Miss Redmond will be my last witness this morning from the department.
All right, I need to check with my staff to see if we have anything that happens at 1. Sometimes there are arraignments. I need to check with that. So why don't we plan?
I have one arraignment at 1:30.
Do you? How long do you anticipate that will be?
Not very long. I only have one, maybe 10 minutes.
Rather than try to interrupt things, then why don't we plan to be back here at 1:45, then we'll proceed straight through after that. Is that going to give you enough time, Mr. Brown?
That'll give me plenty of time. I had a meeting at 2. I'm going to try to. My client's incarcerated, so they're kind of hard to set up, but I'll try to get with the facility and see if I can get that set out maybe a little bit later today.
Let me know how that goes and we'll see. Thank you. We'll be in recess. 1:45 unless we hear something else.
Okay, very good.
This is the matter of the Neaman children, file J22-110-NA. Proofs have been completed. The arguments of counsel and the guardian ad litem have been completed. Mr. Brown, the guardian ad litem, was able to give his closing request to me, but I believe he's gone at this point to another court hearing that he had that he indicated was at 3:30. It's now 3:41. The court has heard extensive testimony today, has reviewed all of the documentation that I put on the record at the beginning of this case. And let me just say this from the position of a judge. I want to say thank you to all of the service providers. It's my impression that everybody cares, which is exactly what you want in a case like this. That doesn't mean that everybody agrees, and I certainly get that. But it's not. This is not a case where I believe that one side, if there are sides, has intentionally done something inappropriate or wrong. There was simply a disagreement with how the services should be provided and what level of services should be provided, and that's fine. The department has, as it should, taken a stance to protect the children. That's what their job is. That's what they were created for. Ms. Thompson and to a lesser extent Ms. Miller have been appointed by the court to look into whether or not reunification should be done. So they are on point in doing that, and that is their job. And so I don't believe there's been a inappropriate view from either side, but I get the point that there is a divergence of viewpoints. The courts inquiry and the court's decision-making, however, is a little bit more broader than both of those. I have to balance not only the children's rights and the children's responsibilities and the children's safety and security, but I have to balance the mother's parental rights as well. So I'm not allowed, I don't know if luxury is the right word, but I'm not allowed the luxury of just taking one particular viewpoint and saying this is where it should go. Most of the testimony that I heard was in line with the viewpoint of that particular agency, and that's good. Ms. Dillon testified, and I don't have any problem with anything that any of the experts said. Ms. Dillon basically said it would be a danger to the kids. There's a problem here. If we go forward, there's too much trauma, and it would be malfeasance, in other words, to go forward with that because of the danger to the kids. And that is exactly the role that she is in at community mental health and working in conjunction with the department to protect the kids. And that's exactly where it should be. I, however, am struck by Ms. Thompson. And the reason I say that was not anything particular to her, but it was her involvement with more than just one child. CMH's involvement in this case has been with Evan, quite frankly, not with Erica. And for that reason, they have a more limited viewpoint. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not throwing stones at them, but I'm simply saying that their viewpoint is as to one. They have some collateral information, and I don't know that any of that information is wrong, but they haven't personally experienced it, personally gone through it. Ms. Thompson, on the other hand, has connections with Evan through her, I don't know, subordinate's not the right word, but the other worker in her office, Ms. Miller. She has direct connection with Erica. She has connection with the mother. She has connection with DHHS. She has connection with Mr. Delaney because of the mother, all those kinds of things. So I think she has a little bit broader viewpoint. And the reason I bring that up is in this case, it really is shaving millimeters off to find out what's the difference between these experts. One says one says the other, as far as what they believe is necessary or important in this case. And I believe all of them, quite frankly, but the only difference that I can find to say, all right, how do I make a decision in this particular case is that difference of contact with the parties. CMH, DHHS obviously has contact with all the parties, so I get that. CMH, the experts, only had contact with Evan. And so I am giving somewhat lesser weight, not because it's wrong information, but because there's lesser experience there to the expert testimony from CMH, and that was giving weight to the side of the department. So that's the first point that I wanted to make. I am not as impressed as I would like to be with mom's compliance with DHHS's parent agency treatment plan. And that makes this decision much more difficult than I would like it to be. Not that mom has not made double negatives. Mom has made significant progress in the underlying reason that she came before the court 3 years ago, which was the drug addiction, which was the harm she was causing to her family. That was the overdose of the father. That was the kids, if not watching their dad die, at least being in the same household as their dad dying, and all of that trauma that goes with it. And we are still reaping that problem from that. And the kids haven't had an opportunity yet to really deal with it. And I'm not blaming either side for that, but that's just the honest truth. They haven't dealt with it. So Mr. Delaney asked me to choose the lesser of two evils. He said, do you wait and have them blow up in the future, or do you put them through a little bit of trauma now and hope that works? All right, so that's a second consideration. Third consideration is I get it that MDHHS did not like what Judge Cooper did a year ago. And they kind of, my term, gritted their teeth for about 6 months and said, we'll see what happens. And then after 6 months, again, and I'm not throwing stones at anybody. I totally get why you did what you did. I can't say that I even disagree often with what you did, but Judge Cooper set this case on a particular path. I don't believe it would be appropriate to jump off the horse midstream. And so what I am going to do is what Ms. Thompson requested. I believe that it's going to cause some problems for the kids. It's going to cause some problems for the stepmom. It's going to cause some problems for DHHS, and it probably will lead to lots of people tearing the hair out of their heads. But in the long term, which is what I believe that I need to take the view of the what's best for the kids, is every stone needs to be unturned before we terminate parental rights. And that's my base view. Mom's not been doing great, but she's not been doing terrible. So I thought to myself, if mom had been doing great, would I grant your request for this termination? No. If the kids were doing great, would I terminate based on mom's poor behavior now? And the answer is no. So I'm left in the middle. I've got the kids are doing terrible, mom's doing okay, but if I took away what the kids' problem was, mom's not doing bad enough on her own to, in my view, at this point, to do a termination of parental rights. The fact that the kids are doing poorly isn't necessarily mom's current fault. Mom may have caused trauma in the past, and I'll hear that when I get to that. But I get the underlying allegations that mom caused some of that by her behaviors in the past that led us to the adjudication and petitions and all, not that, all of the underlying case stuff that we've done to date. So there's, in my view, this case is not cut and dried enough to warrant going to a termination of parental rights immediately. My general view on termination of parental rights is it needs to be as cut and dried as possible. And I don't want to leave any stone unturned in saying we gave mom every opportunity. My view right now is there are collateral things that mom is not doing. Housing, relationships, all of the things that you testify to. And I don't discount any of those things. I think that she needs to work on it. But I also believe that the biggest thing that she's overcome is the biggest thing that she's overcome, which is the drug addiction. There may be vestiges of it, marijuana, the alcohol. I get it. She's playing fast and loose, but she's not testing positive. Okay. I've been an attorney in the criminal justice and the family law field for 38 years now. There are way worse cases out there, and that's a pretty low standard. I get it, but that's my view for today. Okay, there are way worse cases out there, and I don't want to have any question in my mind that when we go to termination of parental rights, was there anything else that we could have done? Okay, so the request today is for 6 months. It's not for unlimited. It's not for long term. It's for 6 months. And then I think we can say if she hasn't done it in 6 months, we have literally kicked over every rock twice and given her every opportunity twice to do this. Okay, Mom, do you understand what I'm saying to you? Okay. In the balancing act that I have to perform between parents' rights and children's rights, you need to understand that I am bending over backwards to give you one more chance to make things happen. That means you got to clean up everything that she talked about, everything. Because if you don't, I'm going to say you just don't get it. Even if you clear up some of it, you just don't get it. This has to be Number one, doesn't matter what they tell you to do, whether you like it or not, do it anyway. That kind of compliance. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
Okay. So what's going to happen next is, in my view, your kids are going to get put through, I don't say this very often, but your kids are going to get put through hell. And I don't do that lightly. I do it very reluctantly, but I think it's important enough for your parental rights to give you one more chance to fight for them. But if you're not going to do everything in your power to do everything that they ask you to do, and quite frankly, do more than they ask you to do, then it's not worth it to put these kids through what they're going to have to go through. Because trauma of the level that I've heard about today, I mean, their reaction to this is just ridiculous. Not in a bad sense, but in the sense that it's so off the charts that the trauma that they're going through has to be just that much off the charts. I can't imagine what these kids are going through. And again, I'm not necessarily saying that you need to lose your rights over your kids today, but these kids have been through hell already. I don't want them to go back there. So I'm doing it grudgingly to give you every opportunity to prove that you can be the mother that you need to be, knowing full well that these kids are going to have to do some huge amount of work. Now, the reason more than you that I'm doing this is because 10 years from now, when these kids are 16 and 17 or 14 and 17 or whatever they are now, I'm going to see them again if I don't give them the opportunity to get this out of their system now, or at least get some of it out of their system now. And that's really where I'm coming from. I've been doing this long enough to know that if you put kids through this hard enough and long enough, it is, like Ms. Thompson said, it is going to blow up at some point. It is going to explode. And I don't want them to be the ones that explode. If it has to be you, so be it. But I don't want the kids to do that. So this, in my view, is the lesser of two evils. This is their opportunity to get some of this, to release the pressure valve at some point, to get through to them in some way so that they don't have to go through life just trying to bottle it all up and keep it on the inside. Even they move or houses time is from self to cause them to have issues. So my biggest thing is I want to do some pressure relief now. That's quite frankly the biggest reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. The second reason is I want to make sure that your parental rights are preserved as much as possible. But it's really, and maybe I'm wrong, but the experts disagree, and I'm the one that the law says has to make that call. Okay, so you may still disagree with me, but that's where I'm making the call at. So for purposes of the motion, I'm not going to grant the motion today. We're going to have another hearing on this in 6 months. I'm going to hear the testimony then from Ms. Thompson or from anybody else that wants to testify. And it may be the exact same thing that I hear all over again. There's been no change. The kids are still not doing anything. But at least I'll be able to say I gave it my all. I gave it my best. So that's where we're going on the motion. So the motion is denied. As to the permanency planning hearing, the court reviewed the documentation that I put on the record previously. I believe that everybody has been given proper notice. There is probable cause to believe that the father of all three of the children, all of the children, both of the children is deceased and is no longer with us. I believe that minimal reasonable efforts have been made, and I don't say that disparagingly. I say that because you've decided to take another tack, and I respect that opinion. But reasonable efforts have been made because the kids have been receiving services. Mom has been receiving and taking advantage of services as well, including drug testing, substance abuse, and working on housing, and all of the things that you testified that she was still lacking in. Those services have been provided. So I believe that reasonable efforts have been made. I believe that it would be a substantial risk of harm to return the children to the home now, take them out of the foster care system because mom's not ready to have them back in the house. Yeah, the house is not ready. She's not ready currently, and the kids are in a wonderful placement. So please let foster mom know that. I have no doubt in my mom that much that she's doing yeoman's work there. Kids reacting to the unification efforts. She's going to need to do yeoman's work again, but I really appreciate how much she's put into this, and that's another saving grace for the kids. So I believe that the needs of the children can be met in the foster family home. Placement of the child in any place other than that does not meet the best interests or the needs of the kids. So the kids are continued in the jurisdiction of the court, placed with the Department of Health and Human Services for care and services, with the discretion to do what is necessary for the kids by way of reunification. I want the plan of Ms. Thompson to be followed for the next 6 months. Grit your teeth and bear it. That's all I can say at this point. I know you don't like it. I know you're probably going to say to me, haha, we told you we were right in 6 months, and that may be the outcome. But I'm going to give mom 6 months to show me what she can do, and hopefully Ms. Thompson can make some progress with the kids. So that's where we're at. We'll have a review hearing in.
Would it be 3 months, Judge?
Yeah, we'll have a review hearing in 91 days, and then we'll have, but with the idea that we probably will just be reviewing as a way of looking at the next 3 months after that for a drop dead date. So is there anything else, Mr. Sommerfeld, that you'd ask the court to do or to find today?
Just that the court is continuing the goal of reunification.
Yes, we will continue the goal of reunification, understanding that that will ultimately be reviewed at the next review hearing, but ultimately be reviewed in 6 months when Ms. Thompson has had a chance to do whatever she can do to help these children. So, all right, that's the order of the court. We'll enter an order and I'll send it to Mr. Brown, and if he wants to review the record, he can certainly do so. Any questions, Mr. Delaney?
Yes, you were reading the expression on my face. I know that Jenny Wagner is performing double duty, if not triple duty, with the court. Sometimes I get her orders at 8 o'clock at night, so kudos to her. So she'll have to build this record. And so I only ask because I know Jessie Thompson will say, okay, what am I doing? And she kind of, you asked her some questions. What do you want? Like sessions in the office and those kind of things. So maybe the way to resolve that is just what the court said a moment ago, that the plan of Jessie Thompson would be enacted or followed or implemented. And as long as that made its way into the order, is that going to be good enough for everyone? Because we have so many moving parts and so many parties, so that Jessie Thompson knows she's got a green light. That's why, because 6 months is gonna, I'm gonna blink and it's gonna be 6 months.
Yep, no, I certainly understand that. The 3 things that I wrote down that she asked for were sessions in her office. So I'm gonna grant that. Begin relationship building between mom and foster mom, monitor the kids' progress and work as a team, and then all on the same plan. So beyond those 3 things, I'm going to say that Ms. Thompson can make continuing recommendations as to how to proceed towards reunification, and the department shall, to the best of their ability, follow suit.
So the final follow-up. Usually what happens is, because so many of the orders are routine, this one's got more complexities to it. Ms. Wagner drafts it, you sign it, and it goes out the door. So as long as someone can just kind of earmark that when it comes through, that you'll see those things in there, and then they're adopted. So otherwise we lose 30 days because Jessie Thompson says, okay. So I didn't mean to overcook this, but.
Yep, no, my view is that Ms. Thompson runs the show at the moment.
Okay.
And the department is there to monitor and step in if there's a problem. But whatever she wants to do, we're going to try to make that happen. Obviously, boots on the ground. If the kids go ballistic and bad things happen, we have to take a step back and reassess and all of that. And ex parte motions are available. Sommerfeld is very able to do all of those kinds of things. But I want whatever Ms. Thompson wants to do to the very best of her ability. I want us to cooperate. And so that's where we're going with this for the next 6 months. If it doesn't work, I believe she will tell us that it's not working. If she's not able to do that, I will listen to whatever emergency motions get filed. But until then, that's the direction we're going. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge.